Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku became an alien's pet? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. He was walking with his mom to the grocery store when the incident occurred. They were going to buy ingredients for his birthday cake. He turns 6 tomorrow. When the sky filled with a million weird shapes. They looked like spaceships from that arcade game. Mom, what's that? They look like spaceships. Do you think they want to be friends? Izuku asked his mom. How cool. I got to see a real live spaceship for my birthday. I don't know, baby. Let's go inside to be safe, okay? She hurried him into a nearby store. Just as they were entering, the ships started to shoot lasers at the people in the streets, making the smell of burnt meat and hair hang in the air and sting anyone left alive outside. She quickly covered Izuku's eyes from the brutal scene and pulled him further into the store. It happened to be a toy store, so she had him climb into a display with teddy bears to hide him from the sight. Then, she went to see if she could help anyone. She was a nurse after all. Izuku stayed where his mom left him for as long as he could, but it got dark at some point. He'd been hearing weird noises the entire time. It went thigh-whack thud right after someone could be heard screaming. Izuku had to pee after being there for what had to have been days if not years, and the sound had slowly diminished and eventually stopped. Izuku thought it'd be safe enough to go to the bathroom quickly and return before his mama got back. He remembered being in the store before and knew where the bathroom was. Maybe it'll be okay if I go potty. Yeah, I'll go and come back and Mama won't have to know I left. He crept to the back as quietly as he could, making sure to not set off any of the electric toys. He got to the bathroom safely, did his business, and left. As he snuck back to his hiding place, he happened to glance out the large store window. He saw a lot of red chunky blobs all over the streets outside. There was also a winged person right outside the window. Their back was to the window, allowing Izuku to only see their wings. They were red with black at the ends and very sharp-looking. Izuku continued to his hiding spot, afraid not to upset his mom. Izuku cuddled up to the bears and went back to waiting for his mom to return for him. Eventually, he was lulled to sleep by the distant sounds, creating a rhythmic lullaby. No, please don't. Izuku was awoken by crying and screaming, but this time it was closer. Izuku peeked out of the bears to see what was happening. There was a tall, stocky person pointing a stick at some more red goop on the floor of the toy store. There was also a lady and kid crying by the goop. The stick was then pointed at the lady and the lady turned into goop and it fell with a thud. Izuku gasped and hid further into the toys, but the person had heard him. They turned and saw his retreating form go behind the bears. They stomped over to him, picked up the bear in front of him, threw it away, and grabbed him. They also grabbed the other child and headed outside. There were other kids grouped together with more large people guarding them. They were chained up with collars and big handcuffs that he was forced into as well. Izuku looked around outside. It's morning now. Where's Mommy? Did they goop her too? Tears welled up in his eyes. He noticed numerous piles of red goo everywhere. Izuku started to cry loudly, I want my mommy. You all are mean. I don't want to be friends with you anymore. Give me back my mommy. He had gotten so loud that some of the bigger kids started to try calming him, not wanting to see him get hurt by the big people. After they failed, one of the guards approached him and started yelling some kind of gibberish at him, only making him cry louder, and when it didn't work they hit him with a dart. Izuku started to feel sleepy and wobbly. The whole world had started to blur. His eyes stung horribly. He closed his eyes to relieve the stinging and felt the world slip away. He next woke up in a big room with bars going both ways, both up/down and across, making the openings too small for him to slip through. He found the handcuffs were removed but the collar stayed and was connected to the back wall. He wasn't alone, at least there were some other kids with him. Most were bigger than him, but one was around his age. He had purple hair and dark circles around his eyes. Hello, do you know what is going on? Sure, they don't like us talking to each other, one of the big kids told him. Some guards stomped past dragging some kids with them. The kids were crying and begging, angering them. They shouted at them in the same gibberish from before the hit and physically threatened them with their staff that did some electric zaps. This caused the kids to cry more, but they followed behind quieter to avoid getting hit by it. We don't know what is going on, but they have been taking kids back there and bringing them back out unconscious. We don't know what they are planning to do with us, the purple boy whispered to him. They stayed in the cell just watching as more kids were taken and then returned. After a few hours, one of the kids in the next cell woke up. They started to growl and tried to attack the kids in their cells. Hey, come on dude. There's no need to be so aggressive with us. We weren't the ones to lock you in there, one of Izuku's cellmates attempted to reason with them. They just growled in response. What's wrong with you? One of the bigger boys asks angrily. There's no need to yell. They're probably scared. It's gonna be okay. A girl approaches the bars, pushes the angry boy aside, and tries to soothe them only to get bitten when she reaches her hand through. The other kids try to pull her hand back, but they got a good hold on her. Angry boy claws are the rabid kid to get them to release her. After they freed her, they continued to growl and claw at them until they got distracted by one of the others in their cell moving. Noticing their vulnerable state, they attacked them, ripping into them. Izuku couldn't look away. One of the big kids had to cover their eyes. Is that what's gonna happen to us? Izuku asked, trembling. Silence filled the air after his question and stayed until the guards came back. One opened their cell and the other entered with their staffs pointed at the bigger kids as they moved towards the girl that had been bitten earlier. Angry boy ran at them to attack them with his quirk. He created bubbles from his hands and shot them at the closest guard's face. They shouted in pain from the bubble residue in their eyes. The one at the door hit him with their zappy stick, sending an electric shock into his body. The boy collapsed from the hit with some involuntary twitches. They pulled their companion out and the boy with their secondary set of arms while threatening them with their staff if any of them got close. They pulled their friend's hands from their face to show the burnt flesh of their face. It was blistering and a violent purple. They guided their fellow guard away while still dragging the boy. After that, they were taken in small groups without much of a fight until it was just the purple boy and Izuku that were left conscious and unchanged. The guards came for them. They pulled on their chains to get them moving and Izuku and Purple couldn't help but whimper, making the guard pull harder on their chains. As they were being guided down a cold metal hallway, an explosion went off somewhere in the ship. The guard grumbled and started to look around. Found and attached their chains to a hook on the wall. Then, took off toward where the explosion happened. We should take this chance to try to escape, Izuku told Purple. Their first obstacle was the hook and chains. They tried to get the chain to slip off the hook by shaking the chain. That didn't work. They tried jumping and throwing the chain up. No luck there either. Their final attempt was to pull on the chain to break the hook. They pulled and climbed it to get as much of their weight onto the hook as they could. The hook didn't give either, but the chains did. That works too. They took off to find a way off the ship. They went through the halls avoiding any of the big creatures. They were sneaking around a group of guards. They walked backward around a corner and bumped into furry legs and looked up to see a huge cat dude. He looked down at them. They stared at each other for a moment until someone talked to the cat dude. He looked away and they ran as far and fast as they could with their heavy chains. They eventually found an open room. They ran into it. It was large and filled with boxes. They hid behind some to rest from their long run. They both took an accidental nap. They were awakened by the ground starting to shake. Keigo couldn't believe such a sentient race existed. These Earthlings have spent their entire existence fighting each other. They are a warmongering species. They are so violent that they put all other warmongering species to shame. Those only go to war over resources, but these will go to war because some guy said that some land belongs to them without proof. The land isn't even any better than what they already have. It doesn't have any special resources or any other kind of economical gain. Now they are starting to get further away from their home planet. They are going to start wars over territories, resources, and their religion, whatever that is. He feared having to negotiate with them. Luckily, the HPSC is going to use the Orphan Protocol. It's where they kill all the adults and take in the children to raise to be less aggressive. When they arrived at the home planet, they dispatched the cruisers. The cruisers shot at the adults that were out on the streets, instantly turning them into mush. This caused the military to show up and start fighting back. Sadly for them, the HPSC had researched the kind of weaponry the Earthlings had and made our ship invulnerable to their attacks. They wiped out the military and landed. He went off to search the buildings nearby. The first adult he encountered was a short round one. He believed it was a female with long green hair. He fired his beam gun at her and turned to leave. Only she hadn't fallen when she got hit. It didn't seem to affect her at all. He needed to call HQ to inform them of this. Their handheld weaponry was ineffective on them. They needed something stronger. He spread his wings and took off to get something else, and the woman ran off in a different direction from him. He found some engineering tools that used a stronger laser. He had them modify a staff to use the same kind of power. He returned to where the female had been and didn't see anything out of place. He stood looking for any sign of movement. He turned around quickly. He thought he saw something green inside the store, but there wasn't any place big enough to hide the female in there. He continued to go through the buildings looking for Earthlings to either deal with or take. After this child, his area will be done. He brought the purple child to where the others are and attached the collar and shackles to them. All of the little ones he had encountered had come more or less quietly. There were some tears but were easy to calm down even with a language barrier. Someone else was bringing another 2 kids. After they were secured, the green child started to cry loudly. The one looking after the little ones started to get annoyed and yelled at them to shut up. The kid clearly didn't understand him and only made them cry louder. Hey, they're just scared. There's no need to yell at them. Keigo attempted to calm him. Scared? What do they have to be afraid of when they can rip us apart? Did you know that one of the middle-sized children completely brutalized Francake? Yeah, the big Jers, he didn't stand a chance against the kid. We had to put them down. It's why they decided to limbo the kids to make them easier to tame and hope for the next generation to be better. This gen will be used for labor and the smaller ones will be made into pets for the upper class. They're cute enough for it. Keigo was shocked. None of the kids he had picked up were any more violent than any kid from his clan would be if they had witnessed the death of a loved one. They had cried and thrown things but, with enough patience, they had calmed down and allowed him to take them away. The kid, who had been crying through their entire conversation, got shot with a dart. What are you doing? That's potent enough to take over an adult Chernofficet. That is enough to kill the small child. He exclaimed while checking on the child. They were still alive for now. If it does kill them, it'll just be one less problem to deal with later, the gunman huffed before walking away. Let's just finish here and leave. Is this area finished or are there still places to check? Keigo asked, just wanting this day to be over already. As soon as they had loaded the kids and returned to space again, Keigo rang the only person he knew that would defy the HPSC, Nizu. He had to get these kids out of the HPSC's hands and Nizu was the only one that could do it. He ran an organization of pirate crews as an information network. He could get them to a safe place and live where they can stay kids. He's there only for that. Hello, who might this be and how did you get this number? Came a squeaky voice on the other end. Hi, Keigo, a friend of Hertz, sure. I need your help. The HPSC wants to limbo the children from Earth rather than assimilating as they planned originally. Keigo pleaded for the children's future. No one deserves to live like that. Something could be arranged. Send me all the known coordinates for the ships with the children and we will do our best to save them from that cruel fate. Nizu's voice spoke in a tone that was rare for him. It was cold, lacking any of the chipper tones that he normally had. Keigo sent the requested info and prayed they would show up in time to save the kids. Meowzawa was on his way with Hertz, sure to where Nizu sent him. He knew the HPSC could be heartless, but he didn't think that they would be so cold as to remove the part of the brain that made the children in their custody sentient. Hertz sure was piloting, so it was his fault that their sneak attack started with a boom. Why am I surrounded by idiots? He mumbled to himself. Let's go save some kids. He exhaustedly slinked into the HPSC ship. The first thing he saw when he exited his ship was 10 guards pointing their guns at them. Meowzawa sighed and went on the attack and didn't stop until there weren't any more soldiers to fight against him. He was lucky that they were new, otherwise, he could have gotten badly injured from that number of trained soldiers. He traversed through the ship to find the captured children and happened to get run into by 2 short beings. They both looked up at him. He could tell that they were some of the kids they were supposed to rescue based on the collars around their necks. Those chains must be heavy for them. He's surprised that they got so far with them still attached to them. In fact, why are they wandering around by themselves? What's up? Hertz sure asked. He turned to tell him about the kids and they took off running. He went to go after them only to be stopped by more soldiers. They defeated them but lost sight of the kids. They continued to where the captives were supposed to be held. What met them there will keep them both awake at night. The floor was covered in red. Some body parts had been ripped from their places on the body and thrown. There was little hope for this batch to be saved. The only thing they can do for them is to give mercy. They looked for the two they saw before but knew they couldn't stay here for too long. The HPSC would send someone to check on the fleet sent to Earth if they are not heard from soon. They both returned to the ship in a dour mood. They took off and left the ship behind them. After a while they started hearing some rustling in their storage. Meowzawa went to check only to get hissed at by the purple-haired child he saw in the halls earlier. The green one was in the back. The last couple of hours have been the most hectic ones Hitoshi has ever experienced. It was a normal day for him. Another set of foster parents yelling at him for being a villain in the making. They had just thrown him into the dark closet they used to punish him when the angel arrived. They smashed through the window like a giant red torpedo. Then, shot a laser at them, turning them into jelly. He was finally saved from them. A hero finally came to save him. He started to cry and ran to hug his hero. His hero picked him up and took him to a place with more heroes. Maybe they are one of the organizations of heroes that work together. He was placed with other kids and a metal ring was set around his neck. Why is he doing that? He tried to pull on it only for his hands to be chained too. Another kid was thrown next to him and got the same treatment. What's going on? The kid next to him started to cry loudly about not wanting to be friends with them. He got shot. These are not heroes. He didn't know what they wanted, but it can't be anything good. The kids were soon being loaded onto a spacecraft. The beings were not gentle about it either. Anyone that didn't come willingly was dragged by their feet. Hitoshi was thrown into a cell with the kid from before and some bigger kids. He was so still that Hitoshi thought the other boy might be dead. He got closer to poke him and he mumbled, "Good, he's not dead." One of the kids in the cell across from him started to yell at the passing guards. Their response was to zap them with a stick thing. It apparently didn't hurt them much because they kept at it, so they smacked them with the zapping stick that shut them up. The guards continued to do that when anyone so much as whispered after that. Eventually, the green-haired kid woke up and started to talk, but he was stopped before the guards noticed. He watched with him as kids were brought back and forth a couple at a time. Hitoshi felt that they had formed a bond, whether it was by being similar in age or just being nearby. Hitoshi knew that the first chance he got to get out, he knew that this kid would be with him the whole way. Not that he ever got a chance to vocalize that to him. The kids in their cell started to be taken back a few at a time, and soon it was Hitoshi and Izuku's turn. They were being pulled down the hallways until a loud explosion went off and the guard left them. They wasted little time escaping. They ran looking for a good way to get out, but either ran into people or found dead ends. They decided to hide in a storage room until there was less chaos going on, but fell asleep waiting. Hitoshi was awoken by the ground shaking. He woke up Green, who started to whimper when he looked in the direction of the door. He looked and saw the large cat person from earlier. Hitoshi growled and prepared himself to fight with all he had to stop them from harming either of them. "Hey, Greenie, I'm going to attack him when I do. I want you to go for his legs. He might be a lot bigger than us, but that doesn't mean he can't be defeated," Hitoshi said, trying to sound as brave as he could. To be honest, he was terrified, but he couldn't let that hold him back. He ran at the cat trying to get to his face, but Hitoshi would settle for anything he could reach. He grabbed an arm and tried to climb, but another arm grabbed him from behind. Where did that come from? He attempted to get at anything but was held too far away and was being held in such a way that he could get at the monster cat's arm. Hitoshi looked to see how Greenie was doing and saw he was captured too. Well, there went that plan, Hitoshi thought disparagingly. He was also trying to make some kind of damage but was failing. Greenie started to tear up. "I want to go home. I want my mommy. I don't want to be here. Why did you take us?" Once the tears started, there was no end to them. "Shut up. You can't go home anymore. We were taken away and we are probably too far to get back on our own. Hitoshi yelled at Greenie. Mommy! Greenie just continued to cry for his mom. Your mom is probably dead, there's no use crying over it. No one can save us now. Hitoshi started to cry too. The two were brought into a furry chest and a hand each started to rub their backs. They continued to cry until they both fell asleep again. Hertz sure was getting worried. After Azawa went to check on the noise, there were more sounds, but this time they were similar to crying. Luckily, he didn't need to worry long. Azawa returned, but he had his arms full with 2 sleeping children. Where did they come from? They were hiding in the storage room. I think they already went through the procedure. They seemed to have claimed the room as their territory. When I entered without permission, they attacked me. Upon failing to do any damage, I think they attempted to do a distress cry for help. The crying eventually tired them both out. I'm going to find somewhere to put them for the journey back to you. Look for something they can eat too. I wouldn't want to let them go into a hunger rage like the ones in the cages did, Hertz sure recommended. Azawa found a big enough box that could hold them both and they wouldn't be able to get out of it easily. He put a blanket on the bottom for their comfort. He opened one of their mouths to see what kind of teeth they have. They have a bit of everything. Some teeth that grind, some that cut, and some that tear. They're probably omnivores. He went through the food packs to find something that would have both and had to settle for just meat since he couldn't find something with both. It was rare to have an omnivore around, so there was never an abundance of meal packs with meat and vegetables. He opened and dished their meals and set them to the side for when they woke up. He knelt to get a good look at his new charges. While he had been looking for food for them, they had cuddled into each other. They were both cute with round chubby cheeks. They both had fluffy-looking fur on the tops of their heads only. He ran a hand through the lighter one's fur and found it soft. One with darker fur appeared to have a galaxy of specks across their face which only made them cuter. He threw another blanket on them and left to help Hertz sure with the navigating. Izuku was awoken for the 3rd or 4th time that day. This time it was a kick to his leg that woke him. He sat up and looked around, only seeing walls on each side of the two of them. Izuku started to shake his friend up. Purple, wake up. We've been moved to another cell. This one doesn't even have any openings. We're stuck here maybe forever. Izuku panicked. Izuku went into a panic attack. The boy rolled onto his back and looked up, then to the side. We're in a giant box. It's okay, we'll figure something out, he said, trying to be reassuring. It has 4 sides and a big opening on top. He stood up and pushed on the side to see if it would give. Can you help me climb up the side? Izuku tried to give him a boost but wasn't strong enough. How about we try to tip it over? Izuku suggested. We could both run or leap onto the wall and use the force and weight of us to make the box tilt. They tried that once. It moved. Let's keep it up. They made the box wobble side to side until it tipped over. But the sound will have alerted them. Let's run for it, Greenie, the other boy said, grabbed his hand, and ran out of the room. When they entered the corridor, they saw that all the doors had a keypad that was too high for them to reach. They went down it, trying every door they saw until one opened for them. It had a huge bed, a dresser, an open closet, and another door. They heard someone in the hallway, so they both ran to hide under the bed. A big yellow and black bird came into the room. They looked around, mumbling in weird clicks and chirps. It was the same breed as the red one that jellified his foster parents. They must be another one of the kidnappers that took us from our home. They looked around, then left, closing the door behind them and trapping the children inside the room. The two waited a bit for the bird to get further away before coming out and checking the door. It did not open. What are we gonna do now? We've been trapped again. Izuku started to panic again. It'll be okay. He paused to look around. He saw some boxes inside the closet under some other stuff. We'll use the boxes to reach the keypad. He grinned proudly at his problem solving. Just as they started going through the closet to get to the boxes, the door opened again, but this time it was the cat person. Hertz sure had been piloting their ship for a few hours. He had to control the ship manually in case they acquired any tails. It's been long enough for it to be safe for him to switch to autopilot and finally get a chance to rest his eyes. But what was that? Hertz sure asked Azawa, only to find that he fell asleep. He switched to autopilot to check what the noise was. It sounded like it came from the kitchen area. He looked, only seeing the box that had the 2 hatchlings in it. At least I know what the sound was, he thought to himself. He continued to look around but didn't see where they could have gone. He went down the corridor and only found one open door. It was his and Azawa's bedroom. Must have forgotten to close the door this morning. He looked into it and chuckled. Azawa has got to see this, he mumbled to himself. There are 2 sets of feet sticking out from under the bed. He closed and locked the door so they couldn't get out of the room, then went to wake up Azawa. He came up to Azawa and shook him awake. Come on, you gotta see this, he told him. Hertz sure grabbed and dragged him to their room. They got the door to it. What's so exciting? Azawa finally managed to ask after being dragged through the ship half asleep. The kids escaped from the box you put them in and hid in our room and under our bed. They didn't hide very well because their feet were sticking out, see? He opened the door but the little ones weren't under the bed anymore. They were making a mess of the closet instead. They were looking for food, obviously. Azawa just sighed and grabbed them both. Let's put you back where you belong. Hertzscher, clean up the mess they made, please. He took them back to the kitchen, fixed the box, and set them into it again. Let's get you 2 some food since you are both so hungry. He plated and gave them each a bowl of food. They tried to bite but got held back by Azawa's second set of arms. Play nice, both of you. He placed something heavy on each side of the box so they couldn't tip it over again. He left to help clean up the mess they had made. After Hertzscher and Azawa finished cleaning, they both went to get their evening meal and check on the kids before going to bed. They were both sitting down to eat together when Hertzscher started feeling eyes on him. He looked over and saw 2 sets of eyes just staring. The 2 kids were giving him the same look that baby Espichness give when they wanted something. I think the kids are still hungry. They are begging for food. Azawa gives them more food, forgetting to hold them back. Shit! The lighter-haired child got him, causing him to shout in pain. His sudden yell scared the other child and they backed away from Azawa in fear. Azawa attempted to get the child off his arm with little success. Their jaw was locked onto it and any movement sent pain shooting up his arm. Azawa decided to sit on the floor and pet the kid's head to hopefully get them to relax their jaws. It's okay. Hitoshi was trying to figure out what the other 2 were up to so they didn't hurt them after their attempted escape and the mess they made. They were just put into the box again and given food. I think we're food for them, otherwise they would have harmed us for escaping from our box, right? I don't think the Catman would be so gentle with us if we were gonna be food, Greenie countered. What's your name? So I can stop calling you Greenie. I'm Hitoshi Shinso. I'm Izuku Midoriya. It's nice to meet your acquaintance. Do you think the food is safe? Hitoshi eyed the weird purple and orange food. It didn't look like anything from Earth, but he was getting hungry. Only one way to find out, Izuku says as he picks up a piece and eats it. It's not the worst thing I've eaten. The boys with food having been deemed safe enough chow down on it. Eventually, Cat and Bird return and start having a meal of their own. Izuku decides to take this chance to observe them as they eat. He can now see more clearly their characteristics. Bird has long hair feathers that stick up like a cockatoo and a yellow chest with big black wings with a little bit of yellow at the ends. They also have arms, not just wings. So Bird is a cockatoo angel. Cat has 4 eyes, arms, and tails. They also have 2 scarf things that are connected to the base of their neck that is currently wrapped around their neck. They seem friendly to each other. Apparently, Izuku was staring too much and it looked like they were going to do something. As soon as Cat reached into their box, Hitoshi bit them and they all heard the crunch. Cat tried to dislodge him, but Hitoshi was too scared to let go in fear of what Cat was going to do to him now that he had hurt him. Cat sat down on the ground and petted his head so gently that Hitoshi was inclined to believe what Izuku said earlier. What do they want with us? After Hitoshi had calmed down and released Cat, he was put back into the box and it was picked up by Cat. They took it to the room from before and set it down in a corner with more heavy things around it. Izuku and Hitoshi sat and watched Bird and Cat get ready for bed. The bird got up on a perch and the cat laid down on the bed. It got quiet for a while and Izuku couldn't stand the silence any longer. Hey, do you want to explore the ship more? He asked the other boy. How would we get out if they made it harder to tip the box over? Hitoshi looked around for anything they could climb onto to get out. He only saw blankets and their bowls. Izuku looked around too. He examined the blankets. They seemed to be big enough for the giant cat. Maybe we could throw a blanket over the side and climb that? It can't hurt to try it, Hitoshi shrugged. They threw it over the side and climbed it to get over the side. Wow, it worked, Izuku mumbled as he approached the door. Cat suddenly sat straight up for a moment, scaring the two. Cat made some chirpy noises and laid back down. Izuku and Hitoshi quietly continued to the door which opened for them. They both warily looked down the halls but didn't see any other beings. I guess it's just those two here, Izuku observed. They left the room with the door closing behind them. They follow the corridor to find something to do while Cat and Bird aren't around to stop them. They found the boxes they had hidden behind earlier in the day. Out of curiosity, they went to see what was in them. They pulled out machine parts, cloth, guns, and unidentifiable stuff. They created a star and scattered the machine parts around it to make it sparkly. They eventually got hungry and went to find where the food was. They found a bunch of weird leafy stuff. Izuku smelled it. It smelled like the stuff found in the containers his mom shakes on the food while she is cooking. They also found some blue pieces of bars that smelled like chocolate. Hi-chan, come look at what I found. It's chocolate but blue. How cool is that? Izuku calls Hitoshi. He hands him some and keeps the rest for later. They looked around some more until they found a vent opening, and of course, they had to check it out. They squeezed into the vent, closing it behind them, and followed it until they found the bedroom and snuck through it. They used the heavy things to climb back in and covered themselves up with the blanket. They were asleep in no time after their great adventure. Hertz sure woke up to his alarm going off for the day cycle to begin. He got up, prepared himself for the day ahead, and then woke up Azawa. Azawa is always grumpy when waking. He requires some extra time to truly be conscious. After waking up, Azawa checked on the little one. The dark-haired one was sitting up, rubbing their eyes. They haven't caused any trouble. It should be fine if they are allowed to walk around, and it might help with any excess energy they have. How about we stretch our legs a little? We can leave your friend to sleep some more. He was talking to the kid knowing they wouldn't understand but was using his tone to keep things calm. He picked up the kid and set them down on their feet outside the box. He led the kid to the kitchen area so they could eat and then walked around. They weren't allowed out of Azawa's sight but could walk ahead a little bit. They made their way toward the cockpit where Azawa checked on their trajectory and distance from UA. They had another 4 tridemics until they reached their destination. When they arrived, he could drop off the kids so they can be sent somewhere safe and maybe find someone to reverse the limboing done to the children. Hopefully, the other teams had better luck at rescuing the Earthlings from the HPSC, because it wouldn't be good if they all were like the ones in the cage. He thought, the level of the atrocities done to these kids have just hit him. He did his best to shake the thought from his mind. I can't focus on the bad, we got to some of them in time, just focus on that. He looked around for the child and didn't see him. Shit, where did they go? He went on a search for them, regretting that he got distracted. He checked the other one. They were still sleeping. He looked in the storage and found Hertz, sure looking at a weird design on the floor. What is that? I don't know. It was like this when I went to check the supplies we have. Do you think there is someone else on the ship with us? We should check for it. I have to look for one of the kids anyway. They gave me the slip while I was looking at our route. Azawa was already exhausted and the cycle had just begun. They looked everywhere a being could fit but didn't see either the kid or an intruder. They decided to try to lure the kid out, at least with some food. They set up child-sized traps to catch them in multiple places on the ship. Now they just needed to wait. Hertz sure went to grab his datapad from where he left it in the cockpit. He didn't see it immediately, so he started to look for it. Maybe it fell on the floor? He started looking on the ground, and the final place he looked was under the control panel, only to see an illuminated face looking up at him. Screech! Hertz sure shrieked from fright and ran to get the braver sentient to come deal with whatever that was. Izuku was excited to see more of the ship. Last night's excursion didn't lead to this area. They entered a room with humongous chairs and a big desk with buttons all over it and a lever in the middle. Cat was doing something at one of the desks. Izuku started looking everywhere. He wanted to see what was on top of the desk but was too short to see or even reach. The only thing he could do was reach a big flat brick thing. He played around with the brick pretending it was a shield and defending himself from an invisible enemy, but the enemy started to overwhelm him and he had to take cover under a desk thing. He then used it as a wall against the unseen enemy. The wall fell over and lit up, scaring Izuku briefly. He crawled out from under the desk to get Kat's attention, but they were gone, so they crawled back under it because his mama always told him to stay put if he ever got lost or someone lost him. He used the time he waited to play with the knot brick. It had a bunch of weird symbols he didn't understand. There were no pictures on this tablet. Izuku knew what his next move should be, see if he could find a way to download games. Also, maybe learn cat and bird's language. He spent the time waiting for someone to find him looking through the tablet until he saw Bird looking for something and started to watch him. Bird saw him, made a loud noise, then ran off only to return with Cat. Cat pulled him out from under the desk. They took the tablet from them and carried him to the room with the boxes. They left and returned with Hitoshi. They blocked the entrance to the room and left again. What happened? Hitoshi asked, still half asleep. I think I made them mad by accident, Izuku answered while fidgeting with his hands. Hertz sure ran to get Aizawa to tell him he either found the intruder or a ghost. Aizawa came running and grabbed the thing under the control deck. It was the child that was found instead. It was decided that the best place for the two little ones was in storage with the door blocked to keep them in and the possible threat out. They then searched high and low for any more evidence of an intruder but didn't find any. They went to get the kids and found them playing with the clothes. Maybe it was something they had done when they got out yesterday. They've proved that they can be trusted to not attack unprovoked. After all, the only time they hurt one of us is when I got too close, Aizawa supposed to Hertz sure. Whatever you say, ya big softy, Hertz sure teased him. I'm not soft, he mumbled into his scarfie. Izuku and Hitoshi were now allowed to roam around the ship as long as either Bird or Cat was around. Every night they slept in the box and during the day they followed one of them. Usually, they were all in the same room, the kids playing a made-up game and the adults doing something on tablets. Today Cat is manually controlling the ship. He docks it to an even bigger ship and then leads the way off the ship and onto the new one. They traveled down the corridors to a big room with more people in it. The room had a table that the people were sitting at. There was a flower person. They were sitting down, but Izuku could see that they had big purple petals that made up their head and a vine of thorns attached to them. Their body was white and had more little purple flowers growing on them. Another occupant was an extremely skinny guy that was yellow with bits of blue. The next person was wearing a tan cloak that covered most of his body with a high collar. Their head was black with gold accents along their jaw and over their nose. Then there was a person with green fur with orange stripes. They had a wide grinning mouth and roundish ears that had an almost point to them. At the head of the table was a white-furred mouse bear person with a scar over one of their eyes. Cat and Bird joined the people at the table, leaving Izuku and Hitoshi to wander the room. They encountered some other human children in the corner of the room. They were trapped behind a baby gate-like thing. They ran to go play with them. Izuku saw a familiar face among them. Kaken, how did you end up here? Like I have to tell a dumb loser like you anything, Deku, a kid with spiky blonde hair responded. Kaken went and sat in a corner away from the others. He was caught by some aliens that were shooting lasers at the adults. He was in the same room as me on their spaceship. How do you know Kaken? Is he always so loud and aggressive? An older blue-haired girl with long curls answered Izuku. Also, why is your hair green? Does it have anything to do with your quirk? What is your quirk? Is it cool? She would have gone on longer if it weren't for a blonde boy the same age as her. He covered her mouth before she could continue. Sorry about that, she just gets excited when she meets someone new. Izuku had to take a moment to calm down. She was scary. It's nice to meet you, I'm Izuku and this is Hitoshi. Thank you for looking after Kaken. I know he can be difficult to handle at times. Hello, I'm Mirio, this is Nijire, and the black hair guy in the other corner mumbling to himself is Tamaki. The others I don't know. We just met them. They spent the time until the adults were done playing with the other kids. Aizawa docked to UA and made his way along with the children and Hertzscher to the meeting to hand over the kids and debrief on their conditions. Nemri, Ectoplasm, Tusher, and Emmy were already seated at the meeting table when they arrived. Looks like you got the cuties. Is that all that you could save? Nemri asked as she looked around for more children. Emmy snickers in the background from the first part. One of them looks like they could almost be our baby. This must be destiny. Marry me. Azawa chooses to completely ignore Emmy's ridiculousness. Yeah, the rest had already either gone through the limboing procedure or were torn apart by the ones that had. Those two appear to have too, but are a lot less violent. We're hoping there might be a way to undo it. Azawa looks to Nizu for the last part. I will have to look into it, but we can certainly try, Nizu thoughtfully pondered. Were there any concerns that could affect their placement with others? Other than one biting incident when I got too close to them during feeding time, no. Azawa holds up his bandaged arm. After this meeting you should get that checked by Chiyo, Hertz sure told him, having just remembered about that incident. After the others arrived the meeting started and the number of saved children was frighteningly low. Nemri and Amai had saved the most from their fate, but that was only 12 poor souls. They all realized that they were the witnesses to the decimation of the Earthlings and possibly even a genocide depending on how well the rescued could adapt to the new environment they had been thrust into. After the meeting, Azawa and Hertz sure got up and started to the door only to be stopped by Nemri. You got some tagalongs? She pointed out their previously unnoticed shadows. The children that had stowed away on their ship were following them for some reason. Nemri picked up the darker-haired one only for them to wiggle themselves free from her grasp and run behind Azawa's legs. The lighter one hides behind him too. They peek out to glare at her as if to say, "How dare you to try to take us from our savior? I think they'd like to stay with you." I didn't sign up to look after them full time. He looks down at them and they look back at him, eyes big and sparkly. Fine, they're staying with me. He picked them up and walked out of the room and toward Chiyo's infirmary. He set them both down on one of the beds there and called for Chiyo. Honestly, why is it every time you are here there is something you need to see me about? Can't you go on one mission without getting injured? She came out of her office and lectured him on getting injured. She had him sit on the same bed as the kids and looked it over. It looks infected. You should have cleaned out properly. I'll put you on some antibiotics. You'll also need stitches and a cast. You won't be able to use your arm for a couple of months. The kids leaned over to watch her work on Azawa's arm. She used her powers to speed up his healing with a green glow. They wrapped their arms around one of Azawa's other arms as if to comfort him. After she was finished with the wound, Azawa asked if she could check the two over. Can you give them a look? I want to make sure that they are healthy and don't have anything wrong with them. She agreed and checked them over one at a time. Since we don't know what a healthy earthling looks like, I can only guess, but they both seem healthy. My only concern is that they are both rather skinny, but that might be normal. Just watch out for any behavior changes and come back if they last for longer than a day or two. Azawa then thanked her, grabbed the kids, and left. He didn't want her to feed them any of her candies. They could have adverse reactions to the caffeine and sugar found in them. Her species are one of the few that can stomach it without getting sick, and she sometimes forgets that. Her mothering tendencies tend to take over when she meets younglings, especially ones that are skinny. He practically ran back to his ship to avoid the nuisances. He could hear the cackle of him. Oh no, she's close. He walked quickly, definitely not running, to his ship, only to realize that he left Hertz sure behind. He had to go back to get him. He found him talking with the bane of his existence. Hello, he greeted with the same amount of enthusiasm as he would another broken arm. Let's go, Hertz, sure. We need to get a move on before our client starts to get impatient, he says as he drags him away. Hertz sure stayed quiet until they were out of hearing distance before asking with a smirk, "What client? It got you away from her, didn't it? We can find one easily enough to make it true enough," Azawa answered him as if it wasn't obvious that he had a strong dislike of talking to Mai longer than necessary. They got onto the ship and took off for their next destination. When Izuku and Hitoshi noticed that Cat and Bird were leaving, they both ran over to follow them. The flower lady tried to grab them, but they were too quick for her to get them. They followed to a big white room with lots of beds and curtains that went around them. The room reminded them of a nurse's office. Cat set them both down on one of the beds and started calling out for someone. Maybe. Izuku hadn't made much progress on picking up the language, but he was starting to figure out that the ones that sounded like it was from another entire language were probably names. A short wrinkly person appeared from one of the doors in the room and corner Cat onto the bed they were on. She had 2 sets of leathery wings, but the inner set had hands on them. They started to examine their arm where Hitoshi had bitten them. Hitoshi and Izuku felt bad for causing the big fluffy creature pain and started to comfort them in the only way they knew how to hug them. After they finished looking at Cat's arm, they turned their attention to Hitoshi and Izuku. They poked and prodded the boys, making them giggle but not hurting them. They also snuck them some more of the blue candy they found on the ship. The boys quickly ate it before it could start melting and make a mess. Cat then picked them up and ran to their ship. He was definitely running. They got there before Bird. Silly Bird was caught talking to the green and orange furred person from the meeting room. Cat had to go fetch them so they could all leave. Hertz sure didn't mind having an audience when he worked, but he wished they didn't stare so long without blinking. The green-haired earthling was constantly following him around, watching him for the last couple of days but never attempting to cuddle him as they like to do with Azawa. Not that he's jealous that they like him more. Anyway, the green one has been following him ever since they returned from the meeting with Nizu. Right now they are peeking around the doorframe at him. He was fixing a part of the air filtration system. They had found that the filter was having trouble filtering the air more recently, and he didn't want it to fail during flight at some point. He, also, figured if he acted uninterested in what Green was doing, they might feel safe enough to approach him. Make them see him as less of a threat. Out of his peripheral vision, he saw movement. They slowly approached him. He just realized they were very good at sneaking. He couldn't hear their footsteps at all. It might be a sign that their ancestors were silent predators, which would not bode well for him if they are mistaking him for food. They were in arm's reach. He could now see that they were looking right at him. Oh God! Is it hunting me? What should I do? I don't want to hurt them. They crept closer and closer. They were almost in his lap and looking at the air filter piece. Thank goodness, he breathed a sigh of relief. I'm not food. He shifted around a little. He hadn't realized that he had gotten so tense. The green child slipped and tried to stop their fall by grabbing him. They accidentally grabbed some of the feathers on his shoulder, making him shout from pain when it wasn't enough to stop their fall. The shout must have frightened the poor thing because they took off out of the room and down the hall. "Aw man, I didn't mean to scare them off," he pouted to himself. He continued to fix the machine piece so that they wouldn't have to worry about it possibly failing unexpectedly, and then went to find Azawa. "Azawa! I made a terrible mistake." He lamented as soon as he saw Azawa. "What did you do?" Azawa asked him tiredly. "I scared the green child. They were finally getting comfortable around me. They were watching me work on the air filter and fell. When they fell, they grabbed and pulled my feathers, causing me to shout. They got scared and ran off somewhere. I'm so horrible." Hertz sure dramatically told Azawa about his screw-up. Azawa had to ask which one was the green one and was told it was the one with darker hair. "I just saw them. They didn't seem to be in a rush somewhere. They even dragged the other one off somewhere. Do you think that it's going to cause a problem in the future with their behavior towards us?" Azawa started to think about the possible repercussions of their fear of the other adult. "We'll have to find some activities that you all can do so they aren't overly fearful of you. We're going to be docking to Dakar 232 soon. You can go explore the trading port with them and maybe get them some essentials, like toys and clothes." Izuku has been watching Cat and Bird closely for any words he can figure out from what they are doing when they say something. He had recruited Hitoshi to help him pick apart what they say to each other. Cat doesn't talk much, but Bird likes to talk to themselves. They do it a lot when it gets quiet, so he had been stalking their feathered savior. They followed them everywhere, watching them, absorbing the dialogue and dissecting it. Right now they were working on some kind of machinery. They had been really quiet while doing that. Izuku wanted to know what they were doing, so approached them quietly and leaned in to look at it. He was almost in their lap. He was so close. Izuku slipped and lost his balance. He grabbed the first thing he could reach, Bird's feathers. They shrieked out a single word, clear as day. Izuku had taken a few feathers with him when he fell, but he got a single word that he could easily figure out the meaning. He had to go tell Hitoshi about his success. He ran to tell him, still holding Bird's feathers. He reached Hitoshi where he was watching Cat, who was watching him back. Izuku didn't know what was going on, but he had news to tell Hitoshi. He grabbed Hitoshi and dragged him to storage to tell him he learned a word from Bird. I learned how to say ow or that hurts in their language. How do you know it's ow and not something else? Also, what's with the feathers? Hitoshi was skeptical that he could figure out any of their languages quickly and without their help. I was watching what Bird was doing and I slipped. They said it when I accidentally pulled out some of their feathers, Izuku explained, proud of his deductive reasoning. He then told Hitoshi what the word was and how to say it just like Bird did. They were starting to get hopeful that they could finally talk to Cat and Bird. They docked at the trading station. Hertz sure was excited to get a chance to get the little ones to warm up to him. He had so many ideas of what would be fun to do with them. After they finished docking the ship to the station, both Azawa and Hertz sure went to find the other two occupants of the ship. They found them in a huddle behind the boxes in the cargo bay. We always find them here. Maybe a smaller space makes them feel safer? Was Hertz sure thought on their favorite spot to have their secret meetings in. Azawa grabbed them so if they got frightened and tried to fight he could hold them away from him more easily. Azawa was built more sturdy and could take a beating better than him. Those tiny limbs were really strong according to Azawa. Azawa handed them over when it appeared that they weren't going to put up a fight. The first shop they had to go to was a clothes store. It had tons of mannequins in different shapes and sizes for the many different species they would fit. The shelves were filled with all kinds of clothes of different colors. There were about 4 feminine attendants of a species known for being elegant and vain. One of the Sparkin attendants approached them. "How can I help you?" she asked Hertz sure. "I'm looking for something that would fit these little chicks," he told her, gesturing to the kids. "We don't serve pets here," she responded in a tone of disgust. She then turned and walked over to the group of attendants to giggle and chatter with. Hertz sure was shocked at the abrupt dismissal. He could not believe that someone could be so rude. He turned and left that store to find another one that would serve them. The next one they went to told him he needed to put them on leashes before entering. He quickly went and bought some, luckily with little fuss from them, and then returned to get them clothes only to find that there weren't any that would fit their body types. He bought some clothes that were too big with the intention to alter them to better fit the younglings. The next stop is the toy store. Hertz sure was glad they were on leashes. As soon as they entered the store, he was being pulled in 2 different directions. The green one wanted to look at the bright and colorful games, and the purple one wanted to get to the stuffed toy. They soon realized they weren't going anywhere and stopped to look at him and each other. He decided to lead them to the stuffed and grab whatever purple was interested in, then look at what got green interested. Green went for a dark purple espinasse. Stuffy and purple got a dark green one. "That's too cute." Hertz sure had to restrain himself from squawking from the cuteness overload. He didn't want to scare either of them, especially not after scaring Green earlier. He started to lead them to games when someone bumped into him, making him drop their leads. "I'm so dash," he turned to apologize before picking up the leads only for them to run away from holding 2 very familiar forms. "Hey, come back here," he shouted as he ran away after them. He managed to grab their arm. It was a female Cauda. When he grabbed her she yelled, "Leave me alone, you creep. How dare you try to take my children? What were you going to do with them?" This captured the attention of everyone in the vicinity. They formed a mob and started to attack him as she ran off. He tried to plead with them but they refused to believe him. Azawa had an amazing nap. He woke up in time to get ready and go meet Hertz sure to go eat something. He hoped that Hertz sure and the kids had a fun and exhausting day shopping. He'd rather they all go to sleep and not spend hours staring at him. It's very unnerving. He was walking down the alley of storefronts when he saw a large group surrounding someone on the ground. He sped up to see if he could help the person on the ground and found out it was Hertz sure. He looked around and didn't see the little ones. "What's going on here? Why are you all beating him up? And where are our kids?" he asked worriedly. That caused the crowd to pause. He wasn't trying to kidnap her kids? Some asked and pointed to the space that the female was in not too long ago. Izuku and Hitoshi felt the ground rumble. Their craft was docking at another station. It looked bigger than the spaceship they had docked to last time. They went to go find Cat and Bird only for them to see them first. Bird was fidgeting a little bit. Cat picked them up and handed them over to Bird, then walked off. Bird carried them off of the ship into the station. He looked around the streets with many colorful storefronts. Bird carried them into a store with big doll things that were the clothes that are sold in that store. Some of the dolls had 4 arms like cat and tails, others were smaller like them, but with shell skin. A shiny, scaly person approached them. They looked like a dragon and a person combined to make one being. They talked to Bird briefly then left. Bird seemed upset by something. They were shaking. They left soon after and went to another store but got yelled at before they could enter. Bird took them to a pet shop-like store. "Do you think they're going to get a pet for the ship?" Izuku asked Hitoshi excitedly before being forced into a harness. "Wait, what? I don't need a leash. Mommy says I'm a good boy that doesn't run off." He tried to tell Bird but Bird couldn't understand him, so it was pointless. Hitoshi snickered at him before he too got harnessed. They returned to the store with the shouty person. There Bird held clothes up to them and clacked his beak. They got some clothes and left that store to go to a different one. This one had toys. They may look different from what they had on Earth, but there were no mistaking stuffed toys for anything but that, so everything else must be toys too. Izuku saw some bright lights and wanted to see what it was. He went that way but didn't get far because of the leash. Bird led them to the stuffed toys. Maybe they just wanted them to get soft toys. That was fine with him too. Izuku and Hitoshi went for ones that looked like a little cat. Bird started to lead them to a different area when someone bumped into them. The next thing Izuku knew was someone picking him and Hitoshi up and running. He didn't know why they would be in a rush until he saw Bird behind them running and yelling. The person holding yelled something back and the people in the area started to bully Bird. "That's not nice. You shouldn't hurt other people." He tried to tell them, but again none of the adults understood him. The crowd was getting further away from them. He had to get them to understand what they were doing was wrong. He only knew one word though. Could it work? There was only one way to find out. The words certainly shocked some of the people around, but it appeared the crowd was too far to hear him. At least the person that was caring for them was shocked enough to loosen their grip on them. Hitoshi was able to jump down from their arms. Izuku tried to wiggle himself free too, but after Hitoshi got free they snapped out of their shock and started to run again with a tighter grip. Izuku decided he wasn't liking this and bit their shoulder in hopes it would get them to release him. He happened to get the area where the neck and shoulder met. There was a lot of bright blue liquid coming from their wound, but Izuku couldn't focus on that. He needed to get back to Bird. He remembered what happened when Hito bit Cat, so Izuku knew he had to be careful not to bite too hard or he would hurt their bones. They were trying to get him off of them. Their flailing was scaring him, making him bite harder. He was eventually forcefully pulled off of them. Some of the person's flesh was still in his mouth when he was set down on the ground. He quickly spits it out in disgust and ran the direction they came from. Izuku hadn't realized that they had gotten so far from Bird. He had run in the direction that he thought Bird and Hitoshi should be but didn't see either of them. He continued to run until he collapsed from exhaustion. He sat down in an alley against a wall to rest. He didn't know where he was anymore. Nothing looked familiar. "I'll just stay here and wait for Cat to find me like he did last time," the small boy thought as he hunched in on himself to keep warm in the cold alley. He had sat in the alley for a while until some people with guns came through and shot him with something that made him sleepy. Azawa took off in the direction the mob said the kidnapper went. Along the way, he heard people putting up a fuss about something. He decided to approach one of the groups to ask if they saw someone carrying 2 human children, where he noticed the lighter-haired child was being scolded. Its owners should know better than to teach such bad language. "We're going to wait here until they show up. I can't believe that such a bad-mannered pet was released into the shops. It even ran off on them," one of that group ranted at the confused child. He ran up to them and asked, "What's going on? Why are you yelling at them? Are you its owner? You should know better than to teach your pets to say such awful words." One of them shouted some horrible profanity. The ranting would have continued if Azawa hadn't started glaring at them. His kind is known for being one of the scarier-looking species, because of the glow their eyes can give off. "I'll be taking them." He lifted the child and continued on his search for his other missing child. The next group he met was surrounding another down person, but this one is a female Cauda. She was bleeding from the neck badly. He got closer to see if he could help her in any way. The downed person was barely conscious but had enough energy to accuse him. How dare you train those innocent beings to be your attack beasts? Based on how the kid in his arms is trembling and flinching away from the female Kauta on the ground, this must be the kidnapper. If they are here, where is my other kid? He looked around for them, but given their small stature there wasn't a chance that he would be able to see them. Taishiro was woken up by a thumping sound. It must be a new prisoner. He opened his eyes to get a look at the new victim for the fight ring. They were curled up and hard to see any details, but he saw that they were small with just a little bit of fur on the top of their head. I hope they're not too young. It's always hard to watch the young ones perish in this kind of environment. He couldn't understand why they enjoyed watching people get killed in gory ways. He's just glad that his species are one of the better combative types. The newbie form started to move around, which is surprising considering they normally drug the prisoners to stay out for a week. But here is a tiny creature that can shake it off within a couple of hours. They sat up and looked around. They approached the bars and were going to touch them before he shouted no at them. They whipped around to look at him. Looking at their face, he couldn't think of any species that would have two big green eyes, green fluff of fur on top of their head, and a galaxy of spots going across their face. Their face was round and plump. If they were like his species, that would be a sign that they are young, but who would send a child out to fight? That would be ridiculous. No, came a soft voice. They were mimicking me? Maybe they're not sentient. All sentient species upon joining the HPSC alliance were given translator implants so everyone would understand each other. He decided to pretend to touch the bars and act like it hurt him and hope they would get it. They looked at him then at the bars and backed away from bars. They sat in the far back of their cell and curled back up. They are also doing some kind of wiggle. Don't know what that is about. They were looking at him now, and now they were getting closer. What do they want? When Izuku woke up from his forced slumber, he was back in a big cage, but this one only had bars that went up and down. There were different kinds of people in the other cages as well. He wanted to see how far the cages went, so he got up to look. Just as he was about to touch the bars, one of the people in one of the cages next to him shouted something. It was much easier to repeat that one compared to ouch. He said it back, hoping to get more context to the word. They did give more context by acting out that the bars are bad, so that word must be bad. I'm getting the hang of this new language, he thought as he did a little happy dance in his newly claimed spot against the wall. He decided to observe the people in the cages around him, since he isn't allowed to approach the bars. The one that shouted was super tall and skinny muscular. They were orange with some thin white lines all over them. They were only wearing a pair of black pants. He tried to look into the cage on his other side but only got hissed at, so he didn't want to get too close to that side. Maybe Shouty will be my friend, he thought as he crawled his way closer to them. He sat down and smiled up at his tall new friend. Izuku was racking his brain on how to befriend someone when they don't speak the same language as you. If he had his cat Stuffy, he could show it to his new friend, but that got dropped while that other person was carrying him. He doesn't have any candy to share with him. He was at a loss at how to get them to be his friend officially. He heard some squeaking coming from further down. He got close enough to the bars to see where the squeaking was coming from. He saw a short toady person pushing a cart with trays on it. They were delivering the trays to each cell. Eventually arriving at his cell. They slide in a tray with a gray mound of slop on it. Even if it didn't look good, it smelled nice. It smelled like oranges. Maybe I can use this to befriend them. It smells sweet, so it should taste like a dessert. I'll give them most of it since they are bigger and eat a little bit, he thought as he divided up his food to offer to his friend. They seemed reluctant to take it but didn't resist much and eventually took the offered food. Friendship acquired. Izuku was so happy he couldn't quite contain his excitement. He was doing a small happy dance in place. He took a bite of what was left and immediately spit it back out. The taste made him gag. It tastes like cack and sweat. Like chemicals. Gross. Izuku thought as he stuck out his tongue and tried to the flavor off of it by wiping it off with his sleeve. He didn't know how anyone could eat that. He regrets giving his friends such awful food. He glanced at them only to find that they were enjoying it. They like it? Maybe it's just me. He lay down to take a nap, not feeling well. To his shock, the creature bared its blood-soaked teeth at him. Are they challenging me? He wasn't sure how well it would work for them if they tried to attack him when there were electrified bars between them. There were no other aggressive actions directed at him, so maybe just a warning for staring too much? He'll just have to avoid upsetting the newbie and hope they don't decide to attempt his life. Maybe even tame them to be an asset for his future escape plans. He started to hear the squeaking wheels of the food cart coming their way. The slop they give their combat slaves was flavorless but packed with nutrients. It doesn't mean it is fun to eat the same bland thing every day. What I wouldn't do to have some of my ma's home cooking right now. She was a horrible cook, but at least it tasted like something, he thought as choked down his daily nutrients. He glanced at the newbie quickly and saw they were offering theirs to him. Maybe they were given too much. If they're not gonna eat it, no use letting it go to waste. He took the offered food. They started to wiggle again. Taishiro didn't know if that was a threat display or a mating dance. Either way, he was glad that there were bars between them because he honestly didn't want to find out. He was eating his extra portions when he heard weird sounds coming from the newbie's cell. He looked to see what it was and saw the newbie do some kind of acid attack on the floor. He could see it eroding right in front of his very eyes. It's too bad the floor was so thick that it didn't go all the way through, because it looks like it's a one-and-done attack based on how the other just lay down in exhaustion. Azawa continued to search for his missing child night and day, but after this long, he had to face it. They weren't around here anymore. His best bet would be to hope someone picked them up thinking he was abandoned and was caring for them. He was dreading breaking the news to Heartbreak. He had been devastated after losing both the children during what was supposed to be a fun day of shopping. Heartbreak had been so depressed that his feathers were starting to lose their shine. He had been spending most of his time healing and bursting into tears at his failure to keep the kids safe. To try and keep his mind off of the incident, Azawa had suggested that Heartbreak fix up some clothes for Purple. He had been using Purple's dimensions to make some for Green as well. I could put some feelers out for anyone that could have picked up a green-furred Terran. Maybe put out some notices for the lost child with a cash reward, he thought as he turned around towards the comms to get into contact with Nedzu. He could be a great help with this considering his extensive information network. He turned around to go to the comms. He ran into Purple. Azawa could see that they had been missing their friend. They have been less energetic lately. He mostly stuck to either Azawa or Heartbreak. They didn't run off and get into stuff. He didn't play around in the storage room. There was a sudden lack of messes to clean up in the morning. He followed them around carrying both Stuffies, Greens and theirs. He picked them up and continued to the comm room. After talking with Nezu, Azawa planned to find the next trading post to look for rumors about his missing child. Terrans being so new should be an asset to his search. There shouldn't be too many of them sold to the public, making the ones that are around rarer. Izuku woke up to yelling. He sat up and looked around. A beetle person was in front of his cell yelling at him in a clicky voice. They were gesturing, but Izuku didn't understand what they wanted. Eventually, after Izuku stayed sitting there staring at them, they entered the cage, grabbed him, and dragged him out. They gestured some more, then zapped him with the staff thing they had. Ow! It didn't hurt much, only the amount that he would get from dragging his sock feet on the carpet, but that didn't mean he wanted to get zapped a bunch. He was forced to walk, and if he stopped they zapped him. They lead him to a big gateway. As soon as the gate opened, he was pushed through and the gate slammed closed behind him. He looked around the area that he was pushed into. It was a large stone room in the shape of a circle. There were lots of giant rocks around it. Those would make some really good hiding spots for hide and seek. I could climb up it and no one would be able to see me from below. He started to explore some and saw something green that was moving around above him. He looked to see what it was, only to see himself on the ceiling. It was a mirror. That's a weird place for a mirror. He climbed a rock to get a closer look. I think I see people on the other side. How did they get inside the mirror? Do they need help? As he was thinking all of that, he heard the gate on the other side of the room. He decided to try rescuing the mirror people after he checked out over there. He climbed down and approached that side carefully to stay hidden in case it was more of the mean guards that zapped him. Just as he was getting close to that gate, he heard a growl from behind him. "Get up, you stupid animal." Taishiro watched as one of the Gyuuyus guards yelled at the newbie, who obviously didn't understand a peep of what they were saying. Their method of getting non-sentient creatures out of the cells without having to get into their territory was to taunt them and capture them while it was distracted, then enter the cell. It only manages to scare this one. They eventually went into the cage when it appeared that they weren't going to be taunted into attacking them. They grabbed them and dragged them out, then made them walk towards the arena. Looks like today is one of the days they have the non-sentients go after each other. A lot of the time they like to set up weak ones against the strongest they have and watch the bloodbath that follows. He is likely to never see the newbie again. It really is a pity. He heard the sound of the guard's electrobaton hit flesh, then a loud yell of "motherfucker." In the chirpy way a Brie Burbaloos says it follows the sound. Taishiro Sai. It would have been a bunch of fun to teach them new words to call the guards. Guess I'll go back to planning my escape, he thought, already knowing that there isn't an escape from here, but it was better than doing nothing. A tall Soisin was sitting in the audience waiting for the show to start. Mirai had been spending months collecting information on this group. There had been rumors floating around about them illegally capturing sentients and forcing them to fight. Non-sentient fights have the approval of the HPSC, as it is part of some species culture to have ceremonies around fights to the death. He needed to find proof of sentient fights to be able to legally bring this organization down. The large door on one side opens up and a small creature mostly pink, green, and yellow with a bit of long green fur on its head enters the arena. It isn't a creature Mirai recognizes, and he doesn't know if it would be sentient or not. He'll have to base it on how it acts. It would appear to have gotten scared by its reflection based on how intently it is staring at the anti-view dome. 1 point towards Non. He tallied against the green thing. It's also good at climbing. That would be another point considering it's rare for a climbing sentient species to appear. Most of the time they adapt away from needing to climb when they do appear. The other door is opened and a Mrukken exits from that gate. It ran out on a rampage. Mrukkens are some of the most deadly beasts known to the universe. One could completely decimate a whole city, and it typically travels in packs. Your chances of surviving an attack in the wild are a grand total of 0%. No one has ever lived to tell about at least. This must be an intentional bloodbath to get the crowd excited. The other one must be a really weak non then. He leans back and stops looking for signs of sentience. The green thing must have a good sense of hearing because it reacts to the sound of the gate. Those kinds are usually created to be quiet to make it easier to catch the prey species unawares and keep predator ones from ambushing whatever comes out of it. The thing approached the door on that side as the Mrukken goes on the hunt for them. The Mrukken is getting ready to pounce on the other when they whip around to face it. The thing is patting itself down? Is it taunting the Mrukken? It's hard to see, but it looks like Mrukken attacked it. Mrukken jumped onto the other. The beast is so big that the other creature completely disappeared under it. The anti-view dome is darkened likely so they can remove the body and sedate the Mrukken. Whatever the creature was doesn't matter anymore because the next fight they have is between two sentient beings. It's a fight between a Boondor and a Music. The Music doesn't stand a chance against the fighting power of the Boondor. Mirai quickly takes pictures and has them remotely uploaded onto his ship that's nearby. He has what he needs, so he just needs to find a way out as quickly as he can. Azawa walked to the local watering hole for this planet. It's the best place to go when you want to hear the local rumors and get information about publicized events. He had to duck under a metal beam as he entered to avoid hitting it. The locals to this planet are a great deal shorter than his 12-foot self, so he was surprised the doorway was tall enough for him. He walked up to the person behind the counter and asked them, "Has there been a green-haired Terran found in this area? I seem to have lost mine." They had a bright yellow shirt with a pair of short green pants. Azawa had to ask Hertzscher what colors Greenie wore so he could give an accurate description of them. "Nah, never seen one before. Heard they weren't worth the trouble of taming them, but they were great for fighting rings. Them little beasts go charging in and get swatted around and are still able to get up and go after. Not real strong through just fun to watch get beaten." They respond in an indifferent manner. "Can I ask around and put up a notice here?" he asked, showing his datapad with the missing notice on it. "Sure, but I doubt anyone would have kept it. They likely would have sold it to some slavers. You're just gonna have to accept that you're not likely to get them back." They responded as they scanned the notice and added it to their board. He went from table to table asking if anyone had heard anything about his missing Greenie, but none had. What everyone was more interested in talking about were the planets that were getting attacked one after another. No one knew what group was doing it. Whoever it was never talked or showed their faces. They all wore large black environment suits. The only characteristics that anyone could use to identify them were that they were biped with 2 arms and stood at around 6 feet. They were weird to. They didn't enslave anyone, only killed people in charge and then left. Anyone injured after the fight was treated with care, even their enemies. They weren't like most invaders at all. Mirai had submitted the report to the HPSC in hopes for there to be one less fighting ring taking advantage of another species' culture to make a profit. He hoped that they would actually do something about it and not sweep it out into the vacuum of space. He had heard that they had found a new species on a planet out in the boonies. They're non-sentient but cute enough to be made into pets. They put them through a process that would make them easier to tame, which Mirai finds ridiculous to do. If they are so violent that there was a need to modify them, then they should have been left there when they were found. Honestly, I don't know why I chose to become an intergalactic patroller. It's not like anything I do is helping the people that really need it. I should have followed Tusher into piracy, he thought as he sat in a coffee house. He was waiting for his old friend and mentor to show up for their secret meeting. A bell sound interrupts his lamenting. A tall yellow boondor with visible bright blue veins enters the coffee house. Tusher has arrived. He looks around until he sees where Mirai is sitting. He heads over to his table without an ounce of stealth. He must be so skilled if no one has caught him. Mirai internally fanboys over Tusher. He is a well-known war hero who has saved millions of sentients. Many people worship the contrails left behind by his ship. Tusher all but collapses in the seat in front of him. Rough day? Mirai asks. Rough week, Tusher replies in exhaustion. Nizu has been looking for a missing child. They had been living with a colleague of mine with another child and were taken while they were all out getting essentials for them. There have been no leads to where they could have gone. Why don't you give me a description of them and I can put out a lookout for them in an official capacity, Mirai offered, even though he is aware of the statistics of how likely they are to be found alive. He doesn't want to be the one to let down this great hero. You'll do that for me? Thank you so much. This will certainly help with the search. They are about 3.5 feet tall, biped and pink-skinned with a concentration of long dark green fur. They were wearing a yellow shirt and short green pants at the time of their abduction. Tusher described the kid with a light of hope returning to his eyes. That description sounds familiar for some. Wait, isn't that what that unknown creature looked like? It can't be. Mirai dreaded if he was right. Is the child's fur curly? Was it fluffy? Please be no. Yes, how did you? Tusher questioned him. Oh, have you seen any Terrans before? I heard that their fur can differ greatly from each other. He smiles at him. What about? Were they forward-facing and large for their face? He continued, feeling sick. Yes, that is another characteristic of Terrans. Is everything all right? You don't look good, Tusher asked, worried for his friend who had paled greatly. I have some grave news. Taishiro was snapped out of his daydreaming planning by the guards talking as they dragged Mrukin to the cell that the newbie used to inhabit. Maybe we should have pitted it up against something bigger. It didn't even leave behind a body when it ate the other creature. Is that what he went up against? The poor little guy didn't stand a chance, he thought as he observed the beast. Taishiro went back to thinking about his plan after watching it for a while. If I can get out of my cell, I could steal one of the customer ships during the times they try to sell off the more injured captives. Maybe release the Mrukin to be a distraction while I escape. He spent the next couple of hours imagining his made-up scenario, not getting much further than stealing the ship and never considering how he would get out of the cell. The Mrukin started to move around during his planning. It looks to be twitching a lot. I wonder if they overdosed it. It might be having a reaction to it. Its body kept jolting up and slamming back down for about half an hour until it stopped. I guess it died. There goes that plan. I didn't even know that it was possible to overdose them. He eventually decided to nap some before he was thrown into the arena to fight. Taishiro was woken up from his nap by the guards shouting and banging against the bars. You're up. You know the drill. Stand in front of the bars with your arms in front so we can restrain you. He did as they said and they were on their way to the arena. They were in front of the gate now. It was opened and he was freed and pushed in at the same time. They then slammed it closed behind him. He had previously tried to escape when they had led him to the arena before and now take more precautions with him to avoid a repeat. He looked around the setup for today's fight. It was the one with the large rocks everywhere rather than any of the open arenas they have sometimes. This means he's likely going up against a stealth race. He snuck around as quietly as he could manage to hopefully get the drop on the other combatant. He saw a glimpse of an earlobe of a music from the side of a nearby rock, which meant that there was no point in sneaking since they would have already heard him. At least he knew where they were now. He wove around the rocks to get to his opponent. When he felt he was close enough, he charged and attacked them before they had a chance to counter. He made sure to give them a quick and painless death. After fighting, he was darted to unconsciousness and dragged back to his cell. Upon awakening again, it was feeding time for everyone. He heard the loud clang of them dropping off the metallic trays literally. He sat up to grab his food only to get distracted by movement from the cell with the Mrukken in it. He looked only to see a soaking wet newbie squirming out from beneath the large predator. What the fuck? Did he cut his way out of the Mrukken? Why is he wet? Meowzawa didn't know what was so important that they needed to have a meeting so soon after the last one. He just wanted to get back to his search for Greenie. There weren't many people in the room, just Nemri and Tensei were sitting in the meeting room with him and Hertzscher. Where's Nemri? I never misses a chance to bug him with all her joke proposals. At least he hopes they're jokes. He couldn't imagine committing himself to someone so loud and cheery. I was told to not bring her to this meeting for some reason, she shrugged. Tusher and tall, green, and yellow Soisen enter the meeting room together. Meowzawa, we have news of your missing Terran, Tusher starts to say but gets interrupted by Hertzscher. You found them. Are they okay? Where are they? When can we see them? The feathered sentient had been mad with worry about Greenie. He couldn't wait to get them back and shower them with affection. We found them, but Tusher looked to the Soisen. This is Mirai. He's the one who saw them. He can tell you what happened. Tusher introduced them and sat in a chair and put his head in his hands. He couldn't bring himself to say it after seeing how desperate they were to get them back. I had heard rumors about an illegal fighting ring and had gone to check it out. There I witness a fight between what I believe is your Terran and a Mrukken. There is no chance such a small, weak creature could have survived an encounter with a Mrukken. I'm sorry to say this, but they are dead. Mirai chose to get it over with and leave little chance of being misunderstood. Meowzawa stood up quickly. You're wrong. How can you even be sure if you've never seen them before? Give me the info for the fight ring and I'll check it out myself. I refuse to believe they're gone until I see it with my own eyes. He demanded while Hertzscher wailed in the background. He had gotten quite close to both of the Terrans and the thought that one of them could be gone permanently completely broke him. It broke Meowzawa too, but he would never admit it. Izuku turned and looked at where the growling was coming from. It was a large dark green furry beast. Their teeth were bared, showing off rows of sharp teeth capable of tearing little 6-year-olds apart. It crept closer to the boy. The long lean body stalked silently towards the boy. There was no mistaking it. Kitty! Izuku shrieked with excitement. He searches through his pockets for something. Where is it? Oh, here it is. He pulls out a string and some cat treats he had on hand for when he saw the stray cats near his apartment building. Good thing I haven't gotten a change of clothes yet, he thought as he made a line with the cat treats. Heats pieces Ed at the large cat while waving the string. The large kitty crouched low to the floor and slowly stalked toward him. Here, kitty, kitty, Izuku tried to lure them into playing with him. They creep closer. They jump and almost collide with him. He ducks away and continues to wave the string. They swat at the string a little. Izuku pulls it away and backs away from them. They crouch down, do a but wiggle and pounce. They collide with him. Izuku is pushed and falls onto his back. They open their mouth. Izuku has a closer view of their razor-like teeth. Their mouth is centimeters from his face. Their tongue takes a long swipe up his face, slobbering all over him. They started to bathe Izuku by the time they were done. His hair was straight and sticking out in all directions. They laid down on top of him. Izuku heard the doors open again and shouting in the alien language. He heard some puffs of air and the cat went limp. He tried to look to see what was happening but couldn't see past all the fur. He could only see a light beam shining on him. He and the big kitty started to float. He held on to the kitty as they glided out of the big stone and mirror room. They arrived somewhere and Izuku could hear the sound of a big metallic door opening, then being floated into a place and set down. He had ended up in a big hole in the floor. I wonder why there's a hole here, he pondered as he tried to see where he was but still couldn't see past the cat's fluffy body. Since there was little to do, he took a nap. The large body over him made his little space quite warm. After his nap, he tried to move the cat enough to see outside of the space. The hole was about his height, making it hard to get any leverage to move the body. He could barely get the cat to move with how little he could push on it. He got it over enough to peek out and see bars like the ones that his cell had. They must have put us back in one of the cages. I hope my friend isn't missing me too much. As soon as I get out of here, I'll have to find them and help them get out with Kitty and me. I need a better name for them. Izuku had always wanted a pet and had some names in mind, but he wasn't sure which one would fit them best. Mochi? Jellybean? Fernando? He'll have to wait to see if one would fix his new companion. For now, he needs to focus on getting out of his little cubbyhole. He decided to rest for a moment before going back to move Kitty over enough to get through the gap he made earlier. After resting for a while, he heard more yelling. He tried moving the large body again with little progress. He could still only see the bars and a little into the next cage now. He tried to squeeze out but his head was still too big. It was getting hot in his hidey hole now and he had been sweating buckets. He wanted to get some more air into his space. After working on the gap some more, he heard a loud clang. He pushed himself through that gap he had made to see what had caused the sound, only to be met with loud screeches. It was a toady guy delivering the food. They were screaming now for some reason. Izuku ignored them and looked. There's my friend. He crawled the rest of the way out of the hole. He walked up to them, smiled, and waved at them. Izuku felt the furry beast get up and stretch. He turned and greeted them too and got a bath in exchange. Toady dropped the tray and scurried away quicker than anyone had seen them go. Kitty grabbed the food, a slab of meat, off of the tray. They gave it to Izuku. When Izuku didn't immediately eat, they became stubborn. They picked up the meat and put it in front of him and sat on him. He was given no choice but to eat it. Trevor was nervous. He had to go into the cell with the Mrukken and grab the Terran from it. The bosses want to use it to send the Mrukken into a rage since it didn't get eaten like it was supposed to. Sure, the other guards are going to be distracting the larger beast, but what if it smells him or something? What if the Terran wakes up and alerts the beast to his presence in its territory? He better dart it to make sure this all goes as smoothly as possible. He's lucky that his kind can eject poison darts that are effective against every known species found so far. The poison causes the victim to immediately fall unconscious. He rarely has to worry about predator species attacking him because he's one of the quickest dart shooters in his knot. There won't be anything in between him and the very dangerous beast. He had arrived at the cell with them in it. The Mrukken and Terran were curled up together, with the much smaller Terran being almost completely covered by the great fluff of the Mrukken. His fellow guards started banging their batons against the bars on the opposite side of where they were laying and away from the door. The Mrukken gently uncurled itself from the Terran and stalked over to the bars. It started to growl and swipe at the guards, making the noise. Part 1 was a success now to just grab the Terran. Trevor just has to go in and grab it without notifying the other occupant. I can do this. I just gotta be quick, he thinks as he opens the door slowly. The door let out a small quiet creak that is nearly inaudible to him even with him standing next to it. Have to get that fixed later. The Terran started wiggling around some. Oh no. It's going to alert the Mrukken to me. I gotta dart it before it fully wakes up. He ejected a dart from his tongue and it hit the creature in the torso. It jolted up, releasing a loud squeak. He glanced at the Mrukken and saw its eyes focused on him. Oh, shit, he turned to run but didn't get far before he felt a large body crash into him. He felt the claws and teeth rip into him and couldn't do anything but scream in agony before it all went dark. Izuku was having a good dream. He was dreaming that he was being hugged by a million kittens. He could hear their purrs, which were harmonized into one big, earth-shaking rumble. Then, it turned into a nightmare. The pleasant rumbling stopped and the fluffy warmth vanished. Now, it was cold with growling and hissing in the distance. He felt something stab him in the side, causing him to jolt up with a shriek and look around. Kitty was trying to get to some people on the other side of the bars. Kitty turned and looked at the door. Izuku followed their gaze and discovered one of the toady people standing in the cage with them, and the door was opened. Kitty bolted for the toad person, who screamed and whimpered, then went silent. The other guards shot darts at Kitty. "Leave Kitty alone." Izuku couldn't let the mean bully guards hurt his fluffy friend, so he ran to stop them. He squeezed himself between the bars and kicked one of the guards in the leg, bending it backward. The guard collapsed from having his leg broken. Izuku wasn't focused on the damage he was doing to them, just trying to stop them from hurting Kitty. Before he knew it, all of them were on the ground whimpering in pain. Izuku turned to check on Kitty. They're still upright, so they must have missed. Thank goodness, Izuku thought as he checked them over. This would be a good time to get out of here and go home. Izuku approached his friend on the other cell. He tested the bars, finding them weirdly wobbly, and made his hands feel tingly. He pulled as hard as he could and the bars gave out. He waved at his newly freed friend, grinning. He was proud of himself. He stood up for his friend and didn't cower from the conflict. He started walking in a random direction in hopes to find a way out of this place. He heard both of his new friends following him. "Take that, Kakin. I'm the leader now," he giggled to himself. He checked to make sure he wasn't going too fast and happened to see other people in the cages. He went back to check for a key for the cages, only to find that his friend already had one and was releasing the people. Good minion. He internally tried to imitate Kakin without the bad and mean words he favors. He waited for them all to be released before starting his march to freedom again. He felt himself getting lifted up. What's going on? Why am I floating? He turned his head to see what got him. It was Kitty. They were carrying him in their mouth by the back of his hoodie. Kitty carried him in the other direction where everyone else was headed. No fair. I'm supposed to be the leader. He crossed his arms and pouted. Taishiro honestly wasn't sure what to think anymore. First, some tiny unknown creature is put in the cell next to his, and they keep bare their teeth at him and wiggling around. Then, they are sent to have their death by a danger beast be entertainment, only to come back with said danger beast as a companion. And now, when the guards try to remove the tiny creature and the beast attacks them like they would if, fuck. No, that's ridiculous. Why would they even send a child into the arena? Oh, wait, they're assholes. They would do that. He sighs. I'll have to keep a close eye on them until I can get them returned to their family. He hears a loud crunch and glances over to see the small, tiny, minuscule creature kick one of the guards' legs backward. Hope I don't die doing it. The tiny creature finishes beating up the guards and comes over to the front of his cell. They grab the bars and just yank, then do a toothy face and wave a hand. Taishiro climbed through the new opening and headed to the guards' bodies. He took their weapons and the keys to the cells. He also dealt with the ones still alive. He released all of the non-dangerous captives and led them to where the escape pods should be if he remembered right from his multiple attempts to escape. He felt something furry graze his arm and looked down. It was the Mrukin carrying the creature in their mouth. When they arrived at where the escape pods were, he had the captives group up and deployed their pods. As he was organizing them, the ship started to shake and they heard loud explosions. Everyone started to rush into whatever pods they could to get out of there before any of the captors showed up to escape as well. As Taishiro was getting into a pod, he felt something holding him back. It was the creature holding on to him and looking up at him with big watery eyes. What's wrong? He started to ask but heard running footsteps. He grabbed them and jumped into the pod. The Mrukin followed after and got in just before the door shut all the way. He launched it and set the coordinates to go to the nearest habited planet. He saw huge, monstrous ships that looked like it was put together using parts of other species' ships. It was horrifying to think of what kind of race would have a ship like that. It could be a parasitic kind, a scavenger, or worst of all, a species that uses the parts of its victims' ships to show off its might. He buckled in to avoid being thrashed around the pod if it was hit, which it was soon after. The hit damaged the navigation. They were sent spiraling into the dark abyss. Azawa set the course for the general area where the illegal fighting ring should be. They weren't finding much, just floating pieces of metal. They collected some pieces to examine. What they found was that they were from something that just recently got demolished based on the warmth and burn patterns. They followed the trail of debris to a debris field with larger pieces. Hertz sure went on a spacewalk to examine what kind of ship it could be, both hoping it wasn't what they thought it was. Hertz sure could use his wings to help control his momentum. This is what made him the spacewalk expert. He even did a few tricks for Purple, who liked to watch them as they flew or worked on machine parts. They seemed to enjoy quietly sitting in their presence, just cuddling up to them. It was likely because of loneliness. He tried his best to keep them entertained with stories or tricks. He couldn't wait till they got their greenback so he could do all the same things with them too. He closed in on the larger pieces. He could see there were many bodies around. It must have been an unexpected attack. There are too many bodies for it to be otherwise. He came to Meowzawa. He went further in to look for evidence of a fighting ring. He found the cells that should have bodies in them if the ship had been attacked, except they were empty. I think it was the captives that attacked if this the fighting ring ship. The cells are empty. We'll have to get Nizu to track any ships that have been in this area. I'm returning now, he said after he went a bit further and found the arena and aftermath of a fight. Okay, I've sent a message to Nizu. I've prepared the entry room for you, Meowzawa answered. Just as Hertz sure had returned to the helm, HPSC ships showed up at the site. They started shooting at them. They took evasive maneuvers but still got hit and lost control of their ship. Izuku was awoken by a horrible smell. It smelt awful and made it hard to breathe. He looked around, his vision swimming for his companions. He could barely see his tall friend slumped over in the big pilot chair thing. The kitty was next to him, laying across the big seat that multiple people can sit on together. Izuku tried to remember what happened but couldn't think. The smell must be distracting him. He unbuckled and tumbled out of his seat, then crawled in the opposite direction of the pilot chair. It's gotta be the direction of the door. He tried to stand but was too dizzy. He wobbly crawled until he encountered a wall. He used it as a stable handhold to stand up, then felt it for any buttons or handles to open up the room. He found some buttons and some of the drawers on the wall popped open. It must be further over, he thought as he shakily slid along the wall, pushing buttons and opening everything. Eventually he found a big switch and pulled it. He collapsed from losing his support. He felt better almost instantly. He took a few moments to get his stability back, then went back in to grab his friends. He didn't want his friends to get sick from the bad smell. He darted back into where Kitty was and unbuckled them. Then he used all of his might to drag them to the entrance. Kitty wasn't as heavy as he expected based on their size. It wasn't easy to move them, but he managed to drag them to the door. The light from outside of the door made it easier to see the way out. He pulled them the rest of the way out so they wouldn't block the way, and then ran to grab his tall friend. He struggled with their buckle. It was different from the ones his and Kitty's seats had. The jostling must have woken them because they came round and looked at Izuku, then undid their buckle. Izuku grabbed their hand and pulled them to the door. They took all of 2 steps before collapsing. Izuku had to pull them the rest of the way out. By the time he got out with his friend, Kitty was up and moving around. They were sniffing around the bushes. Izuku let himself drop to the ground in exhaustion. He was tired from his rescue mission. I think I'm gonna take a nap, he thought as he passed out. Meowzawa tried to keep a tight grip on the controls to stop them from spiraling too far from the debris field. He didn't want to get lost in the dark void without any idea where they were. He used the repulsors to gain control near a planet. He scanned it to check its survivability. It had an atmosphere of high oxygen content and vegetation on it. There was a lack of any toxins and no sign of civilization on it. This would be a good place to land and inspect for damages. He piloted down to the surface of the planet. He didn't want to keep flying in case there was serious damage. Entering the atmosphere caused the ship to shake badly, scaring poor little Purple more than they already were. They had been clinging to Meowzawa's leg the entire time he had been piloting the ship to safety. They landed safely on the planet. Meowzawa walked along one side of the ship while Hertz sure went the other way. They inspected the hull for any serious damage. They found that the right side of the hull had the worst of the damage, and if they had tried to go any further, then there was a high chance that it would have given. They were going to have to fix it before continuing their search for green. Hertz sure went to inform Nezu of their situation in hopes that someone was near enough to give assistance. The comm wasn't on when he got to it, which was weird because Azawa had just talked to Nezu not too long ago. He tried to flip it on but it didn't respond. Great, it's broken too. Now we won't be able to tell anyone of our crash or get help. He exited the room and saw Purple sneaking by. I thought we put them somewhere they couldn't get out of. He picked up the sneaky sneak and went to find Azawa. He found him in the engine room doing a diagnosis. Look who I found wandering the halls, he said, holding up Purple. I think they might be bored staying on the ship all the time. Do you think it'll be safe to let them play outside for a while? If we can get them to stay nearby, it shouldn't be a problem, he replied after some deliberation. Purple sticks so close to us I doubt we'll have to worry about them running off, Hertz sure countered, setting the said child down. They immediately ran up to Azawa and wrapped their arms around him. Azawa looked down at them. You got a point. We can let them out to play, but since it was your idea, you have to keep an eye on them. He patted the child on the head. Did Nezu say how long until we can expect help? About that, it would appear that our comms were damaged at some point, either during our rough landing or when we got shot. We can only hope that they'll be able to track where we landed and get here soon, or we might lose any chance of getting Greenie back. He was worried about poor Greenie being alone and scared out there. We need to get them back. Yeah, we do. The Catman took a breath and told his bird friend, take Purple outside and let them play for a bit. I'll see what I can do to fix the comms. Taishiro awoke to a throbbing head and an aching shoulder. He couldn't remember what happened, but he was outside on a planet now. He looked at his new surroundings. There were trees and bushes. The Mrukin and child were next to him. Only the larger beast was awake and staring at him. The escape pod was behind them. He examined the outside, finding no signs of someone getting thrown. He entered it only to get hit with a strong fume. It smelled like the combustion chamber malfunctioned. That would be impossible. If that happened, then none of them would have stood a chance. The fumes would have caused them all to fall unconscious and then die from being unable to inhale any oxygen. We would have died if there was a malfunction there. Or someone saw we were in trouble and opened the door to air it out and retrieved us. He examined the door and around it. The outside lever wasn't released and there weren't any signs of a forced entry. Very strange. He approached the Mrukin and kid to check on them. The beast appeared to be fine, but the kid was out like an accidental venting. He carefully, while keeping an eye on the protective feline, shook the small being. They only made a sound that was a mix of a growl and a snort. They had made those same sounds back when they were still being held captive. It was likely a noise they made to appear aggressive and dangerous while sleeping. It was also a sign that they were still breathing, which was good. They're still alive. I'd hate to be the one to let a kid die on my watch. He sighed in relief. He entered the ship again, doing his best to stay as low as he could and set the vents to cycle the air to remove the possibly deadly fumes. He didn't know how the door got opened or how they all got outside, but whatever or whoever did it likely saved their lives. Hertz sure took Purple outside and went to set them down so they could play. Their little arms clung to him, making that difficult. They were babbling gibberish to him. Poor guy must be scared of the new environment, he thought as he sat on the ground. He raised his dark wings to surround them, creating a space for them to feel safe. He set Purple in his lap and quietly talked to them. Don't worry, I won't let anything hurt you. I'll be here to watch and make sure of it. Just go play and have fun, okay? He told them in a gentle voice. He knew that Purple wouldn't understand him, but hoped that maybe if he spoke in a calm, gentle voice they would be less afraid. He tried to get them to play again. They again refused, shaking their head and babbling. He kept holding them and tried to smooth them by cooing at them. It's normally something for young Burbolus. He hoped it would work on Terran Young, which it did kinda. They calmed down but didn't release him. For the final attempt to get them to play, he grabbed some sticks to play with. He used it to create a tower with the little Terran watching. He gave them some to try building. They stuck them into the ground and jumped between them. They wandered further away for more sticks. Hertz sure figured they wouldn't notice if he moved up into the trees for a better view of them playing. He spread his wings and propelled himself up into the branches above Purple. He watched them play their nonsense game for a few minutes. They started to do something in the dirt and turned to his previous space, baring their teeth. When they saw he wasn't there, they started to make a strange noise. It was high-pitched and drawn out. They twisted their heads side to side looking for him. Just as he was about to coo at them to get their attention, a couple of things happened. Purple started to say actual words loudly, no, stay, no leave, with their eyes leaking. A biped about 6 feet in height stumbled into the clearing they were in. The biped knelt down to Purple's height before they could do anything to them. Hertz sure swooped down from the trees between them. He puffed up his feathers and spread his wings to hide the child and intimidate them. Who are you? He hissed at them. Purple clung to his legs. Meowzawa must have heard them or saw the biped because he came running. What's going on? Who's this? He snarled at the biped, his fur raised. They held both hands up, making them wary of any tricks they could pull. Chill, we here in peace, they spoke in a jolting manner. We be no harms. It was like they weren't being translated directly but learned. Hitoshi had been spending the past weeks sticking close to Bird and Cat. He didn't want to lose anyone else. He wanted his friend back, but he didn't know if that could ever happen. It had been so long since he had been taken. The ship shook badly for a while, and now Bird and Cat had been coming and going from outside. Hitoshi couldn't help but be curious about what they were up to. He tried to sneak his way out of the ship to watch them. It was hard to do considering they put him in a locked room. He had to move some boxes to climb on just so he could reach the keypad thing on the door. He did all that work just to get caught when passing the pilot room. Life's unfair. I just wanted to know what they were doing that they wouldn't allow me to watch. It's not like I've done anything to disrupt them when they are working, he lamented. Cat and Bird were talking about something now. I should have focused on getting more of their language learned. Then I could maybe understand some of what's going on, he moped. I only know a few new words. Bird carried him outside into the clearing the ship landed in. There were lots of trees that would be fun to climb and grass to roll in. They brought him to a cluster of trees and set him down. The ship was on the further side of the clearing they were in. It was like that time he watched one of his foster parents release a cat he snuck into their house. They told him if he did it again they'd do the same to him. No one would care if a child destined for villainy went missing. They told him that the wildlife would like the meal he'd make. Are they going to get rid of me like Mr. Fluffless? He thought as he looked up at Bird with tears in his eyes. Hitoshi wrapped his arms around their leg. Please don't leave me. I don't want to go. I'll be good. Please don't leave me here. Bird sat, pulled him into their arms, and raised their wings to make a dark, enclosed space. It reminded him of the closet his foster parents would throw him in whenever he got into trouble, was too annoying, or for whatever other reason they could think of. Normally, Hitoshi would be scared of being confined in a small dark place like this, but he wasn't alone. Bird was holding him and cooing like a real bird. Maybe they aren't planning on abandoning me here. Maybe they want to play with me. That could be lots of fun. I could tell Bird and Cat how to play some of the games Aizu and I like to play. Then when Aizu gets back, we can all play together. Bird let their wings down and got some sticks. They built a tower. Okay, I'll show you how to play this game. He got up and set up his game. It required rope, but Hitoshi made do with more sticks. He jumped side to side over the sticks. That's how you play this dash, he turns to show Bird. They did leave me, he thought, tears welling up in his eyes. I thought they were dash, he sobbed. No, stay. Leave me, he shouted, feeling hot tears run down his face. Then he heard something run out of the trees. His vision was too blurry from the tears to see them. He only saw a large dark form approaching him. Everything was black and feathery. Feathers? Bird. They didn't leave me. Hitoshi ducked under the large wings spread out in front of him and hugged Bird's legs. He didn't know what was happening. Bird and Cat were now standing in scary positions like they were going to attack the other person. With his tears no longer blurring his vision, he could see that the new person was human-like, wearing all black and a big bulky helmet. They talked to each other for a while before the other guy ran back the way he came from. Cat picked him up and brought him back inside. They tried to leave him in the bedroom, but Hitoshi didn't let him go this time, so they were forced to stay. Izuku woke up to fluff everywhere. Again. Cupcake, the name Izuku finally decided on, seems to think that he gets cold when he sleeps. She keeps laying on me. He wiggled his way out from underneath her. He didn't immediately see his new friend anywhere until he glanced inside the ship. They were in the big chair, doing something with the controls. Izuku watched them work for a moment but quickly got bored. He wandered outside again. He wished there was someone to play with him, but Cupcake was still sleeping. He grabbed a stick and drew in the dirt. He drew a story. It was about a kitty cat that was thought to be a monster and grew up very awfully lonely. He found friendship in a bird that sang his sorrow away. After that, he wasn't lonely ever again. He drew the final picture with the kitty cat and bird finding two boys and becoming a family. I miss them. He raised both hands and slapped himself. Being sad won't solve anything. I gotta stay optimistic. He thought it slowly and pronounced that way. He continued to draw more. He made a circle around Cupcake and stuck some sticks spaced out in the circle. They were supposed to be the replacement for candles. He pulled his hood over his head and chanted nonsense words like in that movie his mama watched after he was supposed to be in bed. He looked around for something else to do, but all there was trees. He saw some small little bugs. They looked like tiny horsies with armor. Lead me to adventure, little steads. He followed them into the forest. Taishiro had spent the last couple of hours making a diagnosis on the escape pod. The most pressing issues he found were the communications and the combustion chamber. He already knew about the combustion issue, but for the comms to be malfunctioning, something must have gotten damaged when they got hit. Its operating systems are placed in the innermost parts of the engine, so if the ship is hit, the comms are most likely to work. Still, it even has a separate source of power. This is going to take a long time to fix. We'll have to settle in for a long stay. First on the priorities is to find a source of clean water and food. He started to plan as he exited the pod. It wouldn't be a good idea to leave a youngling by themselves, so I'll wait for the other two to wake up before we start searching for resources, he decided after seeing that the Mrukken hadn't moved but there were random sticks surrounding them. There was no way for the kid to get out of the overprotective embrace of a mama. But it's weird. I could have sworn I saw something green moving behind me. I thought it was the kid. He checked the perimeter for signs of anything trespassing, but nothing looked disturbed as much as he could tell. The only signs of other creatures in the vicinity were some bugs. After he returned to where the kid and Mrukken were sleeping, he saw the large beast getting up and stretching. He grabbed some food from the ship for them. When he went to offer it, he noticed the lack of a small being. Where did they go? He asked aloud, which was probably a bad idea to attract the attention of the aforementioned overprotective Mama Mrukken. She was now watching him and growling, "Uh-oh?" Izuku followed the mini-horsies into the forest, playing make-believe that he was an adventurer on their way to finding a secret hideout of a super-evil bad guy who is bad and evil. The mini-equines were the bad guy's minions, and he was following them to their hideout. He is such a bad dash. He tripped over something while he was in the middle of his monologue. He looked to find the perfect stick laying on his path. This would be perfect. He picked it up to carry it and heard splashing. He followed that sound to a break in the trees. There was a big glittering surface just begging for a small 6-year-old to cannonball into. He ran to the big lake. That looks like it'd be so much fun to swim in. He shed his clothes and jumped in. He swam down and saw a bunch of little fishies. I should catch some for Cupcake. He swam back up and gathered some vines. He weaved them together to make a net. He tied some sticks to it so it'll float, then set it into the water. He went to play away from his net until he felt enough time had passed for some fish to be caught. He splashed and dived. It was tons of fun for him. After playing for a couple of minutes, he heard a deep, bone-shaking growl behind him. Izuku slowly turned around and was met with a set of snarling teeth level with his face. He backed away from them and saw a familiar furry face. "Why you scared me?" Izuku exclaimed as he crawled out of the lake. He approached to give them a soggy hug. "That was a mean thing to do, Cupcake." After the surprise Cupcake gave Izuku, he felt it was the perfect moment to show his great fish-catching ability. He went to where he had set up the net and pulled it up. There was a lot more than he was expecting to catch, so dropped it back down. He went to find something to put the fish he wanted to keep and release the rest. He wandered over to one of the trees and looked at the large leaves, perfect for wrapping stuff in. He climbed the tree, gathered some leaves, and slid back down. He laid out the leaves and raised the net with all the wiggly fishies. They jumped up, trying to escape, but Izuku was an expert fisher now and was able to grab them out of the air like a pro. He threw the fish he caught onto the leaves he laid out. When he felt there were enough fishies, he dismantled his net and released the remainder. He then was going to wrap the fishies to bring back to the ship with him and Cupcake. There's less than I thought there'd be, Izuku thought as he wrapped his bounty. Cupcake is chewing on something. Hertz sure was waiting for the stranger, who introduced themselves as to get back. After some gesturing and random words, they came to an understanding of sorts. I didn't understand half of what they were saying, so I hope that was what was agreed to. Both of their groups were stuck on this planet due to differing reasons. They are hiding here until they deem it safe to move on. They didn't want to tell Hertz sure's group why they were hiding. He has to wait for them to return after they talk with their group. If this goes well, they will help us fix our ship and we will help them learn our language. Maybe they can copy one of our translators, then we won't have to interact with them nearly as much after they fix our ship. I don't like how interested in Purple they seemed. The entire time they had been talking to the other person, they kept glancing at little Purple. Their heads stayed tilted down in line with Purple and rarely raised to look at either adult. We're going to help them and keep them far away from them. If they try anything, I'm going to make them regret ever landing on the same planet as us. The bushes rustled, indicating the return of Din and two other people. They were both shorter. The shortest had a rounder shape to them and wore a baggy green jumpsuit and helmet, and the other was slender with a pink outfit. This be Inko Midoriya and Aki Hatsum. They are helpful for you, they introduced them. Where be others? They asked after looking around the clearing. They went back to our ship. It was nap time for the little one. I'll show you the way to our ship and we can discuss the repairs needed. He turned and walked the way back. Is it only a small being living with you? Asked the shortest. They sounded hopeful. Yes, they are the only ones we have right now, he responded curtly. He didn't want to encourage them to try anything, especially with Purple. He was going to make sure they stayed far away from them. He also didn't like the reminder of his failure to protect the other child that had been in his care. The young child that was to never return to them. The Mrukken slowly approached Taishiro. Taishiro, in fear of being mauled, turned and ran away from the dangerous beast. He got into the tree line and attempted to reach one of the lower branches only to feel something big run past him. It was the Mrukken running through the trees, ignoring him. Why are they I should follow? He thought as he ran after them. They primarily followed a trail of insectoid quadrupeds and then diverted to a darker portion of the forest. They traveled that way for a couple of minutes before he saw something glittering in the distance. He could hear splashing as well. The beast sped up, growling louder. They ran toward where the splashing was coming from. They were much faster than Taishiro. By the time he caught up with them, he found the touching scene of the Mrukken grooming a soaking wet child. It had taken a moment to realize it was the same kid. They were missing some layers. Earlier they had a yellow and green coloring where there is now just pink, and is that a person's face? They must have been dressed by their previous owner. He noticed a set of clothes laying on a rock not far from the pond. He needed to rest after running through the forest. He observed the two's reunion. The Mrukken showed a surprising amount of emotions for being classified as non-sentient. They were far too protective of a youngling from a different species to be considered non-sentient. The first crew to visit their home world must have done a bad job at classifying them. The procedure for classifying involves observations based on how they interact in specific situations, like how they react to intruders. If they negotiate is strong evidence of sapience, but attacking is the opposite. If they can be tamed, could count as sentience. There are more tests, like proof of tool usage, but the reports from them all had that they had a non-sentient result. Non-sentients are creatures that only have primal desires, like food and mating, and not much else. Something's amiss. After much grooming, the kid managed to wiggle themselves free from the motherly Mrukken. They wandered to the other side of the water where there was a large bundle of sticks floating. They pulled them up, bringing up a knot of vines that captured a horde of fish. And that is a young sapient right there. I need a nap. Taishiro collapsed backward. Jean was intrigued by the human child he saw in the forest. He didn't know that any of the kids that were abducted survived whole. All of the records his group found had said that they were all modified and no longer had any intelligence left. The ones they found all acted like feral beasts, but that kid. He didn't act like all he wanted to do was rip out Jin's throat, rather he acted like a normal scared child. He needed to get back to his group and let them know that there might be some survivors. He arrived at his group's landing location. He saw some of them wander around outside. "Hey Jin, why were you gone so long? Did you run into trouble?" "Not now, Saki, I need to talk to the boss lady." "Saki? My man." "Great Tasiya," he responds as he passes him. He entered the ship and made his way to an office with a green-haired lady sitting behind the desk. She was the one to mediate between all the groups, so they voted that she should be their leader. She was the only one that could get everyone to obey. She lost her son during the abduction and had been looking for him ever since they got into space. After seeing many different planets and seeing the atrocities committed by the rulers in space, the same ones that stole children, her search for her son had become a side mission. She refused to let those bastards get away with being bigots to everyone below them. "Boss lady, I met some aliens in the woods. Monstrous things. They had a human child with them. They were treating them well but didn't like me getting too close to them. They're holding the kid hostage. I made a deal with them that they'd help us learn their language and we'd help them fix their broken ship. I forced them to agree to help us." Jean explained the encounter he had with the bird and cat people. "We can go meet them with Aki to look at their ship and see what we can do for them." "Did the child have green hair and freckles?" she asked hopefully. She stood from her chair and gestured for him to follow her. "Nah, they had fluffy purple hair." "It looked lame," Jean answered. They walked to engineering bay to grab Aki. Entering, they were met with a small child with pink dreadlocks sneaking into the bay. "Hi Ithme. Aren't you banned from engineering after you almost caused the ship to explode in the middle of space? I couldn't have been prouder of your chaos." Jean admonished the child, trying his best to sound serious. She was a hyper child, being one of the fellow children that hadn't been taken, and everyone couldn't help but spoil the child. "But there's nothing to do around here. What am I supposed to do if I can make babies? We're not even in space right now," the child dramatically countered. Inko couldn't stop herself from laughing at the two's dramatics. "How about you go help the gatherers for now? We need to talk to your mother." "Fine," the pink cat pouted as she wandered off. "Such a ridiculous kid," Inko sighed. "Let's get in there and tell Aki about our new friends from the woods." After Izuku wrapped up his bounty, giving Cupcake the same look his mom would give him when he misbehaved, he tied it to his furry companion like saddlebags using some vines as ropes. He threw his clothes back on and grabbed the perfect stick he had found earlier. "Okay, let's go back to the base camp," he said sternly, like the military guy from one of Kaken's favorite shows. He started back into the forest. They traveled through the trees, Izuku leading and waving his stick around like a baton. He was having fun pretending to lead a troop through the dark and scary woods. It was far too sunny on the planet they landed on for any of it to be called dark. Along the way, he picked some pretty flowers and braided them into his companion's fur. "Now you're super pretty and soft," he proclaimed to her as he admired his work. They arrived at the escape ship without encountering any distractions. Izuku freed the larger greenette of their fishy burden. He looked around for a way to preserve his bounty but didn't know how to find salt, so his only option was to smoke them. He started to use his stick to dig a hole and threw some smaller sticks he found in the area. He had enough sticks of a good size to make a triangle stack as he saw on TV and twigs, but he needed big pieces to keep the fire burning for long enough to smoke the meat. He entered the forest to get the fuel for the fire he was going to make. As he was gathering sticks, he felt like he was being watched. At first, he thought it was Cupcake, but a glance around proved that wrong. She wasn't in sight among the trees and wouldn't hide from Izuku. "Hello? Is anybody out there?" he called out to his surroundings. "I better finish this quickly." Taishiro woke from his nap to find the clearing that previously had a Mruken and the kid was now empty of them both. He got up to look for where they could have gone. There wasn't a clear path left behind by them, but he figured he knew the way back to the escape pod. He headed in the direction he thought it was but got turned around. He found the pond again instead. While pondering how he got back there, a scream could be heard. He ran in that direction and found the long limbless body of an Andoropida. It had a slight lump, hinting to Taishiro that might be where a scream came from. It turned its attention to him with hunger in his eyes. He grabbed the nearest thing to him, a stick, to defend himself. The lump started to move around like whatever it ate was kicking and pushing at it. The internal struggle was causing an obvious amount of pain because the Andorapida thrashed. He watched as whatever it was that got eaten ripped its way out through its stomach. Dark purple blood and gory cover the poor thing. He couldn't tell what species it was, only that it was a biped about waist height to him. They wiped the gory from their face, revealing. Hizashi had just informed Azawa that the other group had just left. He had been stuck in the same room as a hyperchild for hours. He wanted to try letting him burn off excess energy and look for resources. The best way would be going into the forest again. Hopefully this time we won't encounter other people. Hizashi said that they are in that direction, so I'll go the opposite. He walked through the trees carrying his small Terran and some bags for whatever he found. He finds a clearing and sets Purple down. After watching him look at the surrounding plants, the child started to play in the open area. Aizawa picked some berries and stored them to scan for edibility. He grabbed some vines and other vegetation as well to scan them as well for components. He turned to check on Purple only to see an empty clearing. Luckily, Azawa was a skilled tracker, so he could know which part of the grass was most recently trampled by something the same size as the kid and follow it. He followed the tracks into a different clearing. There he saw a great mass of green with a bit of purple in it. Assuming they were hiding in a bush, he continued toward them until the green mass moved to reveal a face. It was a Mrukken. Shit. I could probably kill it, but Purple could get harmed. I gotta get them away from it, but how? He looked for something to distract it with, causing him to notice a weirdly arranged pile of sticks. It looks like someone was setting up a fire pit, but where did they go? I don't see any signs of a struggle, and there isn't any evidence of the sticks being burned. He glanced at the great beast. They hadn't moved, just watched him. He tried to call and beckon the kid away from the dangerous beast, but due to them not knowing or understanding, they stayed where they were. Before anything else could happen, a scream could be heard from the forest on the other side of the clearing. The Mrukken finally took its eyes off Azawa to look in that direction. It stood and ran off in that direction. With the beast gone, Azawa could finally run over to Purple and check them over. He looked at where they were before only for nothing to be there. Where did he go? Was the scream shit? He ran after the Mrukken. Taishiro ran the gory victim to the pond to wash off the blood, chanting, "Please, be okay. Please be okay. Please be okay." They just stared at him with a slightly shocked look on their fleshy face. They had just been silently staring at him since he snatched them from their bloody cocoon. He got to the lake and furiously used the water to scrub at their appendages, checking for injuries from being eaten. He got to their face and head last, as he removed the last of the coagulated gunk from their face. He noticed something. Their spots are gone. Is that a sign of sickness? Some species do that when they're sick or stressed. I don't know how to care for a sick child. What if they die? He cleaned their hair, revealing its purple coloring, scaring him even more. It's gonna be okay. I'm going to help. Help? Okay, look fine, they asked, pointing at him for the final part. This time the words the kid said had more hisses and rolling R's like how Athos talks. Where do you keep learning these words? I can't be me. I've barely talked to you or even sound like that at all, he asked rhetorically to himself. Guess I should teach you more. I'm Taishiro, he said the last part towards the kid staring blankly at him. Taishiro, he said it slower and pointed to himself. The kid's head tilted. Taishiro? They did a close mimic of his accent and pointed to him. Good, and you? He nodded and pointed to the kid. Hitoshi, he responded, baring their teeth like they did when they were on the prison ship. Taishiro flinched away from them. Are they mad at me? Why would they bare their teeth at me? I thought they were only doing it to be more intimidating. He slowly checked Hitoshi one last time for any injuries, making sure they wouldn't take him as a threat. They looked fine. He stood and gestured for them to follow and led them back to the escape pod. Azawa followed the great beast through the trees, cursing every rock and root he tripped over. In his panic to catch up to the Mrukken, he became like a kid again in his clumsiness. He kept tripping over roots and getting knocked down by branches he failed to notice. After many tumbles, the larger creature finally stopped at the break in the trees. He tried to hurry himself up to catch it before it could harm the person that screamed earlier. It was more of a trudge than a jog. After this, If I survive, I'm going to work on my endurance. He exhaustedly entered the clearing only to be met with someone he rather not. It was a yellow boon door with white and orange markings. Although he is in his deflated form, he is still very muscular. I think I remember seeing a hero with the same markings as him. He must have screamed. It's surprising how shrill he can scream, Meowzawa observed as he hid from the other sapient's eyes. He sat in the bushes, watching the Mrukken approach the hero. It stalked over to him angrily. Oh no! He's going to get ripped apart, he thought with glee. The heroes were always a thorn in the UA crew's side. They are far too competent for being the HPSC's lackeys. They would go out and monologue about being the good guys while helping the government suppress and enslave people. As he got comfortable in his shrub, a fluffy purple head peeked out from behind the boon door. Meowzawa's blood ran cold. Fuck. Purple is in the Mrukken's warpath. What should I do? What can I do? He looked for something, anything that could help in his surroundings. The closer the creature got to his kid, the more panicked he got. Fuck, he shouted and jumped out of the bush. He ran at the Mrukken. Get away from him. He pointed his blaster at it. He was aware that it won't do much if any damage, but it was the only hope he had that it would hurt it enough that it would hopefully distract it from the kid and they can get away to safety. Izuku found some large pieces of a tree that had fallen. He scavenged it for parts that he could lift by himself. He grabbed a couple and carried them back towards the campsite. On the way, he heard what sounded like a cat and a balloon fighting. He dropped his burden and went to check what it was. The noise took him to the lake from before. He found his friend from the cage, Cupcake, Cat, and Hitoshi. He ran up to Hitoshi. Hi. He hugged him with all his might. I've missed you all so much. He tried his best to withhold his tears but couldn't fully stop the few that escaped down his cheeks. He felt a pair of arms surround him in return. I missed you too, Aizu. Izuku pulled himself together with a sniffle every couple of minutes. So, what's happening here? Why is Cat fighting with my friend? You know Taishiro? Hitoshi asked. Yeah, after I ran away from the kidnapper lady. I was captured by some people who threw me into a big hallway with big cages in it. Taishiro was in the cage next to me, Izuku told his little friend, slowly pronouncing his cage friend's name. It felt weird in his mouth. That's also where I met Cupcake? He pointed to the large cat. Cupcake had come closer to the two when Izuku started to cry and was releasing a purring click to comfort the crying green child. Hello, Cupcake, Hitoshi greeted the big cat in a cheerful voice. The boys sat by the fluffy beast, watching the adults argue until they got hungry. I'm hungry, Hitoshi said after his stomach started to grumble its displeasure. I caught some fish earlier, do you want to have some? Izuku offered to him. He led the other back to his base camp, grabbing the big chunks of wood on the way. They set up the wood and stopped. Do you know how to start a fire? No, do you? I guess we could eat it raw. It should be like eating sushi. Izuku offered as he went to grab the fish. He found the leaf wrapping. It was torn and empty of fish. Cupcake? Did you eat all the fishies? He stood accusingly in front of her with his hands on his hips, causing Hitoshi to giggle at the ridiculous picture he made. I guess Bird would have food for us. On the way, I can tell you all the new words I've learned. Hitoshi pulled him in the direction they came from. They went back to the clearing and around the lake into the trees. They met some bikers, or at least they looked like bikers to them. They had their back to the children. Hello, biker people. Izuku waved to them and quickly ran after Hitoshi, who hadn't stopped. They found a giant rock that would be perfect for a game of King of the Hill. They circled it a couple of times to find the best foothold to climb it. We gotta come back to this after we eat, Hitoshi declared, excited to finally have the open space and a companion to play with. Yeah. Izuku agreed as they continued on their journey toward food. The boys arrived at the ship and came across an unexpected obstacle. The keypad was too high for either of them to reach. They looked at each other and played rock, paper, scissors. You cheated, Izuku complained as he crouched down. No, I didn't. You just suck. Hitoshi climbed onto Izuku's shoulders. They used the wall for balance as Izuku stood back up. Hitoshi put in the code, opening the door. After Hitoshi got off Izuku, they gestured to Cupcake to come in. She just snorted and sat herself against the shuttle. The boy ran into Bird as soon as they entered. Hitoshi chose this moment to tell Izuku, "This one is called Hazashi by cat. Is he sure?" "Oh, hello, Mr. Hazashi." Izuku peeked out from behind Hitoshi. Since Azawa was gone with Purple, Hertz sure was using the peace and quiet to work on some reports he'd been procrastinating on. Purple likes to play with his datapad and he couldn't bring himself to stop them. He had even downloaded an educational game for them. They are just so cute. Like they understand the shapes and colors. Maybe that's proof the procedure can be reversed. He was hopeful that the little ones they saved could be healed and go on to live a good life away from the HPSC. Maybe Purple will have a chance at a good life unlike poor little Greenie, he thought sadly. He was soon disturbed by the shuttle door opening. Purple must have gotten tuckered out. He got up to greet his friend and help him get the kid in bed, but the entryway lacked the SPNES's familiar form. There were only two small figures, Purple and another of their size behind them. "Hello, Purple, did you find a friend out there? Where'd Azawa go?" Purple just stared then pointed at him. "He's sure?" The kid turned to their companion who peeked around them revealing their green fluff of fur, speckled face, and green eyes. It was a familiar face, a face he thought he'd never see again. The revelation of Purple saying his name took a backseat to the return of their other child. The child he and Azawa both thought was gone for good. He scooped both children and carried them to the dining/cooking area. After setting them each into a chair, he grabbed a knife and fruit. "I hope you two like this. It's been hard finding food Purple likes, but Nizu sent word that the other kids loved these fruits. This should be a good snack for the both of you." He talked to them to fill the silence as he cut up the fruit. He set a plate of them between the kids to share. "Enjoy." He watched them dig into their food. Greenie's fur was wilder than it was before. It looked like it had doubled in size since his disappearance. "One moment, I'll be back in a micro. You both stay there," he told them as he stood and left them. He returned swiftly with Azawa's brush. "Okay, let's see if we can tame this madness a bit." He pulled the brush through their fur starting from the top but quickly hit a snag causing them to let out a shout. Sorry. He petted them in comfort. Azawa would be better at this since he has fur as well. He continued more carefully. He eventually finished and cleaned the green fluff off the brush. "You shed a lot, don't you?" He looked at Purple. "I guess you could use a brushing too." He groomed them as well. "We don't need help from pirate scum like you," the hero shouted at Azawa. "At least I'm not an arrogant, incompetent HPSC lackey," he countered. They had been arguing too much to notice that the children had doubled and then vanished. "All I want is for you to return my kid. They got eaten. They're clearly safer away from you." Taishiro turned to grab the kid, but they were gone. "What Ash? Where are they? What did you do?" Azawa realized the situation as well. "The Mruken is gone too." "The Mruken isn't a danger to them. They've been overprotective of the kid this entire time," the Boondor refuted. "Whatever, because of you I have to track them down again." Azawa dismissed him to crouch near where the kid was. He swiftly found theirs and another set the same size. "Who was with them?" He stood back up. "The Mruken, they've been protective of a kid, right?" "Yeah, that kid," he reaffirmed. "They had purple fur the entire time, or did they at any point have a different color, like green?" Azawa had tried to push down any hope of finding his other kid but couldn't extinguish all of it. "If they were really your kid, would have already known they had green fur before going purple," Taishiro critiqued. "I have a purple-furred and had a green-furred child, but the green kid was kidnapped. My partner and I, have been searching for them in the past metacycle. They must have gotten switched at some point. Today," Azawa concluded, "I have to find them before something else happens to them." He quickly left not caring if the hero followed or not. He follows the tracks of the two children and the Mruken to a camp with a wood pile and an escape pod in it, but no kids. He searched for clues to where they went next, finding torn leaves that smelled of bad meat and paw prints. He followed them, speeding up his pace. They took him back to where he had been fighting with the hero. "Well, this looks familiar. What? Did you get lost?" He tried to antagonize but was ignored. Azawa was too preoccupied to care about anything that came from him. He briskly continued through the area until he met some more of the other group. He had no wish to inform them of his kid's disappearance for fear that they might use this chance to take them. He glanced at the others and then continued to track the wayward kids after not seeing any evidence that they had encountered them. He next found a rock that got circled. What's so special about this rock? Oh, such an amazing tracker, a sarcastic voice called out. Why are you following me if all you're going to do is criticize me? The Espines questioned. And leave them in your hands? I think not, he countered. Your services aren't needed. They'll be better off with us and away from the people that murdered their families. Azawa bitterly said. He was getting fed up with the Boondoor's self-righteous attitude. They wouldn't do that. The other tried to argue, but Azawa shut that down fast. How would you know? You've never seen their species before. You don't know that they legalized turning them into pets. How can you see yourself as the good guy when your bosses allow that kind of vulgarity? They are babies. They shouldn't have had their lives uprooted like that. He was shouting at the now silent hero at this point. He stared them down for a moment before going back to tracking down his kids. After feeding the kids and putting them down for a nap in their box, Hertz sure went to find Azawa to ask him where he found Greenie. The first place he looked, the helm, was empty, so he went to the engine room next. Upon discovering it lacked any life forms, we checked if he missed them coming from the living quarters. After searching and not finding Azawa for some time, he checked the entrance and peeked outside. He quickly ducked back in and shut the door. There's a Mrukin, he thought in shock. It was lounging against the ship. There's a Mrukin and no Azawa. Did it kill and eat him? He must have held it off so the kids could get inside. He gave himself a moment to mourn before checking all the systems. He needed to see if he could get the shuttle to lift off with the fixes the other group had done for them. He pulled up the diagnostics to check, but it told him that the exterior paneling was still compromised. It won't let him start in that condition. He'll have to go outside to see if he can do anything to fix it or wait and see if the Mrukin will get bored and leave. The diagnostics told him there weren't any other structural weaknesses, but he needed to see with his own eyes. He checked every wall that bordered an outer side. As he examined his shuttle for ruptures, he thought about his situation. Now that I'm thinking about it, I didn't see any signs of an attack. There wasn't any blood or a body. Maybe he got away. Maybe he's just waiting for it to leave before returning. After he finished his survey, he went to check on the kids. They were both still asleep. They were curled around each other like a couple of Espines kits. He sat and watched them just breathe. It was unbelievably calming. I can see why Azawa got attached so quickly. They're really cute. He better be safe or I'm going to kick his ass. I don't want to raise the youngling alone, he thought to himself, feeling irrationally irritated. He wanted to hit something. He wanted to make it bleed. He was distracted by his thoughts by the sound of movement. He looked in that direction and met a pair of green eyes. Hey, buddy, what are you doing up? You've barely slept at all. He stood to retrieve the child. He carried them around, hoping to lull them back to sleep with his swaying steps. They laid their head on the joint to the inner appendage he held the child in. Please, let Azawa comes back safe. I'll do better with the kids. I know I've only been given a datapad purple to occupy them instead of playing with them. If Azawa returns, I'll do more with them both. Hertz sure bartered with the universe. Just please bring him back to me. Greenie didn't fall back asleep. He just lazily watched him as he paced. After walking through the ship once, he returned to his resting quarters. It was where Terran's resting cube was. He was going to check on the other kid, who was also awake. You do, huh? I guess today's had too much excitement for you two to sleep. He set Greenie down and picked up the other child. Purple sat next to Greenie and they started to chatter with each other. He sat next to them and listened to their babbling as he subconsciously fiddled with his opinion. The longer he listened, the more coherent they became. I must be going crazy. I think I'm starting to understand their jabbering, he thought as he paid more attention to their conversation. The words didn't make a comprehensive sentence, but they were words Hertz sure understood. He heard a random word, then gibberish, and it was repeated with a new word after a backforth. Some were said with gestures, like yes and no. They moved their head. Hertz sure sat up as a realization came over him. He tried to subtly search for his datapad, which he saw was on the side table by his bed, on the other side of the kids from him. He gently stood up and gingerly attempted to grab it without them noticing. He got it and started to record a vid. 2 sets of eyes met the camera recording them. He froze, unsure what to do. Hello? Hello. Greenie responded and bared their teeth at him. People play? Fun. Why did they bare their teeth at me? They aren't mad at me if they are asking to play, but what if they're just mimicking what they've heard? Hertz sure internally panicked. They got up, grabbed a hand each, and started to pull him out of the room. They were taking him in the direction of the entrance. Do they want outside or Azawa? Either way, they can't. I'll have to find something else for them to do. He led them in the other direction. They resisted at first but were quickly bribed with one of the toys they got before Greenie was kidnapped. He showed them a metal puzzle toy. He gave it to Purple and Greenie came over to them to watch him play with it. Hertz sure herded them to the infirmary since he needed to check Greenie for injuries. He set them on the medbed and gave a non-metallic toy to them. Then set up the scanner to check their health. Luckily they had a baseline from scanning Purple so they would know if they got sick. He gently pushed them to lay back and started the scan. Greenie was too interested in the toy to pay any attention to the machine he was using. He sat to look over the results on his datapad. It was all quiet for a moment before. WWWREPPP. The sound of the entrance door reverberated throughout the entire ship. He flew out of his seat and into the hallway. The children followed him out, looking in the direction the sound was coming from. He tried to usher them back in, but they would cooperate this time. They both clung to him, refusing to release him. He needed to see who was breaking in. As he progressed through the forest following the children's tracks, Azawa couldn't help but notice that the path was quickly becoming familiar. He looked around and saw the shiny external of a ship, his ship. He continued following their trail to the clearing with it. The Mrukin was lying next to the hatch, sleeping. Isn't that your ship? Why are we going back to your ship when we should be looking for the kids? The annoyance continued his pestering. He wouldn't shut his trap the entire journey. He felt the need to question him whenever Azawa stopped to check or look for more tracks. It wasn't even like he was of any use to their search for the kids. It's where the tracks lead to. Now, for once in your life be quiet while we get past the beast, Azawa chided. He quietly walked and opened the door, watching the Mrukin as he approached. Why are you sneaking around? It's not going to attack. I think they did something to it that it's non-aggressive, the Boondor said as he leisurely followed, not bothering to quiet down. The Mrukin's eyes opened to glare at him. When he didn't stop or even slow down, it growled and got to its feet. It followed him as he backed up. Azawa used the distraction to open and enter his ship. A pair of small voices greeted him, Zawa. He looked down to see his kits by his leg. He swooped down and grabbed both of them. Hertz sure was running down the hallway entrance and stopped upon seeing him. Is that you, Azawa? How did you get past the Mrukin? I found someone to play decoy for me, he informed him. Outside the hatch behind him screams could be heard. They were very brave. I will miss them. Shouldn't we be helping them? Hertz sure inquired. He didn't want to traumatize the kids by letting them hear someone die. If you want to, but I'm not letting him anywhere near the kids. The Espinus carried the kids further into the ship. Okay. Let them play some educational games on the datapads, the Burbaloos told him. They've started talking and I want to see if they can learn more and maybe form comprehensive sentences. He took them to the helm where his datapad was and tracked down Hertz sure's, finding it in the infirmary. He sat them both down on the medbed, made sure they couldn't turn on anything and gave each of them one of the datapads after loading an educational program for them. They became mesmerized by the dancing, colorful shapes. He heard the sound of a blaster going off which he was quick to distract the children from. They didn't need to be put in any more danger. They've gone through way too much already and more than deserve to have a break from the chaos. Maybe after the ship gets fixed, we could go on a vacation together. Hertz sure's flock had been wanting to meet Purple ever since he mentioned them, and my Floof would probably like to meet them as well. He started to plan out the schedule for the upcoming weeks. Hertz sure reopened the door, his blaster ready. As soon as there was enough clearance for it to jump through, the Mrukin leaped into the entryway. He released a screech that could usually incapacitate anything as he was tackled to the ground. He gripped the blaster, ready to shoot it. It had to charge first, but luckily the Mrukin was only sniffing him. He can maybe survive if he can shoot it before it realizes how delicious he is. Its mouth opened as it finished charging. He needed to shoot now, or he's a goner. Izuku and Hitoshi followed Zawa, formerly Cat, back to the white room with the loud machines and bed. The Catman handed them each a tablet with a colorful game on it. They both quickly got absorbed into the hypnotic display. They played for a little bit before a zapping sound went off in the hallway. Is that a normal sound for the ship, Hito? Izuku asked, climbing down. No, Hitoshi responded, getting down as well. They headed for the door together to discover the mysterious sound. Suzuha noticed their distraction and gestured them away from the door. They picked them both up and sat on the bed with them. He played with one of the tablets to pull up a video with flashing colors. With each new color, it announced a word. When purple flashed across, it said a word Hitoshi recognized but couldn't figure out the context for. Zawa and Hazashi said it randomly like they were talking about something, but Hitoshi didn't know what. Green showed up next. That word was similar to another word they'd say also. He looked up at Zawa and asked while pointing at Izuku, "Green?" They froze and stared at him for a moment before replying, "Yes," with some extra words with it. "Hey, Izuku, they call you Green." He grinned at him. "Yeah, and they call you Purple," Izuku responded and stuck his tongue out at him. "They aren't very creative." Hitoshi agreed, "Yeah, but neither are we." They giggled together at their silliness. He turned to Zawa and told him, Izuku, while pointing to himself. The Catman blinked before repeating, "Iku?" "No, Izuku." He tried again. "Izuku?" They tried again. Izuku grinned at them, "Yes, good job." He pointed at them, "Zawa," and then at himself, "Izuku?" "Zizawa?" "No, Aizawa," they responded with their name, much to the children's confusion. "Yes, Yuzawa," Hitoshi agreed and pointed to himself. "I Hitoshi." "I Hitoshi?" they asked him. "Yuzawa, I am Hitoshi and he is Izuku," he corrected, pointing to each person. "Hitoshi, Izuku, Zawa?" they repeated back with more pointing. "Yes," the boys said together and fell over in exhaustion. "He's so silly," Izuku complained. "Why is he talking like that?" Hertz sure shot his blaster only for it to do nothing to the Mrukken. Its mouth widened as it approached his face. Fuck! He closed his eyes, accepting the inevitable. He could feel its hot heavy on his face. In fear of the sharp teeth that would go with that breath, turned his face away to hide. He could already imagine how it'll feel to have his flesh ripped apart. Huh? "You gross," he exclaimed from the tongue swiping up his face. It started to bathe his face. He tried to push it off him, but it didn't budge. The giant beast released a rumbling sound similar to Azuas. Usually, that means he's happy, so if I dash, he thought as he gave the beast chin scritches, hoping that it'd ease up enough that he could get up. It leaned into the scritches, covering the burbaloos entirely. He tried to wiggle out from underneath but was having trouble getting freed from the suffocating embrace. He managed to wiggle out enough to see someone enter his ship. They were a tall yellow person with white and orange lines along their limbs and body. He recognized them. "They're a hero." He frantically tried to get free. "What do you want?" He pulled his blaster on them, already charging it. "You're trespassing, get out of here." Whoa. Let's calm down, I was with your partner, looking for some kids. Have you seen them? Where is the glare anyway? They backed up with their empty hands visible. They finally noticed his predicament. Do you need help? I guess you were the distraction, he muttered, struggling to free himself. Yeah, I could use some help. They came around and helped pull him out from beneath the sleeping fluff ball Mrukken. You said you were helping Aizawa to look for the kids? Why? He asked after getting freed, suspicious of their ulterior motives. Yeah, I met the green child on a slave ship. They sent them out to fight and returned with the Mrukken. It seems to have adopted the kid. The purple one I found after they got eaten by an Andoropida. The Boondor started to tell him about the purple kid's great feat but got interrupted. You saved Purple. Thank you so much. I don't know what I would have done if something happened to them after Greenie got kidnapped. Hertz sure hugged them. I didn't really dash, they tried to correct him but didn't get much of a chance. Don't be modest. For once, a hero did their job and that's something to be proud of. You're an actual hero. He cheered for them. But he started before realizing that the Burbaloos wasn't going to listen to him. You should know that the purple kid goes by Hitoshi. They told me themselves. Really? I gotta go tell Aizawa. Can you keep an eye on the Mrukin? Thanks. Bye. He ran off before Taishiro could say a word. He's going to be so excited to know we can stop calling them colors. Maybe we can start referring to them as their actual names before they find out about their nicknames. He'll be glad for that. Aizawa sat on the medbed holding both children, watching a youngling show about colors. Much to his embarrassment, Purple and Greeny realized what they were being called. He knew they were going to regret naming them based on their looks. After some giggling, Greeny introduced himself as Izuku and Purple Chitoshi. He had also acquired a new name since part of his name confused the kids. He laid back with the kids nestled into his sides while he held the data pad up for them. The music from the kitvid was soft and gentle, lulling Aizawa to sleep. Loud footsteps echoing from the hallway woke him up from his spontaneous nap. Both kits were sleeping in his arms. He carefully rose out of the medbed and tucked the children in it. The footsteps grew louder as he unsheathed a plasma knife. Since he was the only one to protect the kids until Hertz sure returned from his pointless venture. Aizawa. He heard Hertz sure's screech as he ran past the infirmary. Where are you? His voice became more distant. I guess he's finished with the hero, he muttered, turning to check on the kids. They were both still asleep, wrapped around each other. Those two could sleep through anything. He left to track down his wayward partner. We're over here, Hertz sure, he called out for him. Oh hey Aizawa. I found out Purple's name, he told him, practically jumping for joy. His face was wet with a mystery liquid but he seemed okay. Yeah, it's Hitoshi and the other is Izuku. They told me themselves, the ethnos informed him. Where did you learn their name? The distraction told me. The Mrukin got in and they followed it in. It's friendly to the kids and us but not to them. All it did was bathe me and then fall asleep, he divulged. By the way, where are they? They fell asleep. It must have been a busy day for them, Aizawa said while trying to fix his fur to lay flat. He started to lead him back to the infirmary. Just them? The others smirked at him. Well, excuse me for being tired after running through the forest for my kids, he defended. I also now go by Za. It's what they call me. I think the first part of my name is a word in their language, so my attempts to correct them failed. Yeah, they call me Hazashi. They say my name so cutely, he gushed about the kids. They arrived at the room and saw the sleeping babies. Everything about them is so cute. Izuku jolted awake at Hertz sure squawking. You loud, Zashi, they admonished and went back to sleep. Sorry, he tried to apologize only for Izuku to hold a digit to their mouth and release a sound similar to air escaping. They're such good talkers, he yelled. Maybe you should leave them alone, Aizawa suggested, pulling him out of the room. What did you do with the Mrukin? I left it with the distraction, Hertz sure told him as they went to check on their guests. It was too heavy to move and I didn't want to wake it either. As they came in sight of the entrance, the hero ran up to them. Why do you people keep leaving me with that beast? Don't you know it wants to eat me? Why did you have to follow me? I told you your help wasn't needed, Aizawa countered. You also weren't invited onto our ship, so you're trespassing. Do you think I'm going to leave those kids with you? They'd be a lot safer with people who aren't always on the run from the law, they argued. I'm going to go with you to make sure they can be placed in a safe environment. At least we won't do heinous procedures on them to make them compliant. That's a lot better than what would happen to them if a council-run organization got them, Hertz sure jumped in. So they did that as well? They gasped, shocked by the vulgarity those kids had been treated with. Why would they do that? Who the fuck cares? It's something that shouldn't ever happen to anyone. Aizawa exploded. There's no reason to do shit like that. I don't have a way off this planet. See, can I get a ride from you guys? He nervously asked after a moment of shock and outraged silence. Just till you get to a place that I can contact someone from? Aizawa exhaled in anger and gritted, do whatever you want, then left. Hertz sure stayed to guide them to a room they could use. Taishiro was led to his temporary quarters on the criminal's ship. It was a small room with boxes along the walls and a toilet in the corner. The Burbalouse said that he'd bring some bedding for him later. After clearing it, he checked the area for recording devices and looked through the boxes. He opened the nearest box to see machine parts. The next one was the same. Maybe I can find evidence or hints of where they plan to strike next. He continued his search to the other boxes. His snooping allowed him to miss the soft footsteps coming down the corridor. Nothing is interesting in those boxes. It's just replacement parts and other shit. You're not going to find anything incriminating. The Espinus threw a pile of blankets on the ground and left. He dragged them into his room and spread them out to have a barrier between him and the cold floor. He set aside one for if he got too cold later. He looked over his work. At least it's better than being stuck in that cell again. After he finished setting up a sleeping area to the best of his abilities, he went to find one of the pirates. He walked in the direction he believed glare came from. It took a couple of turns, backtracking, and some ladder trips to find anybody he could ask directions from. As he passed a door, it opened by itself unexpectedly and caused him to inflate in fright. He peeked into the room, seeing an ordinary infirmary but no one in it. The doors shouldn't open on their own, he thought as he entered the room, assuming he'd find someone inside. A walkthrough showed an empty room, so he turned to leave and saw who opened the door: the kids. "Hey guys, what are you doing over there?" he asked them, walking towards them. The purple one, Hitoshi, flinched and covered the green child. "It's okay, I'm not going to hurt either of you. I'm just looking for Yom. What are they to you both? Anyway, I need one of the adults. Do you know where they are?" They blankly stared at him before talking to each other in an unknown language. They led him out of the room and down the hallway. Hitoshi woke up in the white room on the bed with Izuku but no Zawa. "Zuku, get up." He shook his friend awake. "I'm awake, Hito," he sleepily mumbled as he sat up. "What's so important that you had to wake me?" "The adults aren't here. We can play freely without them stopping us," he replied, excited for a chance to see more of the loud room. Zashi wouldn't let him inside. "Come on." He jumped down and ran over to the door. "Fine," Izuku sighed as he followed him. They opened the door just as someone is walking by, someone that wasn't either Zashi or Zawa. They were rounder and taller than them. The person looked into the room while the boys hid out of sight. They entered the room completely missing the two kids. "Let's just sneak out and leave them here, okay?" whispered Izuku. When they got to the door, the stranger turned around, catching them sneaking out. Hitoshi jumped in front of Izuku, ready to defend his smaller friend. They paused for a moment before rambling at them. The boys gave each other a questioning look. "Did you catch anything they said?" "No, did you?" "No." Together they slowly backed away and then darted down the hall. They turned down the hallway leading to the bedroom but continued past it since they could still hear the other guy's footsteps but didn't see him. They threw themselves around a corner and waited for the stranger to pass. After losing them, they started to explore the parts of the ship the adults wouldn't let them. Instead of the loud room, they found a window room. The window was on the ceiling and only showed the sky, but the children loved it anyway. "Maybe Zawa and Zashi will let us watch the stars when we leave this planet," Izuku exclaimed excitedly. "That would be pretty cool," Hitoshi agreed. "But for now, let's see if we can find the loud room. I think it was on a lower floor." They left the room to continue their journey to the loud room. They went back down the ladder to get to the right floor. The smells of food cooking met them as they got to the floor they were on before. Their stomachs made themselves known with some loud grumbles. "Hey, Hito, I'm hungry. Do you want to grab something to snack on before going to the loud room?" The floral-haired boy asked the lilac-haired boy. "Sure, I'm hungry too." They climbed off the ladder and scurried in the way of the delicious smells. Zawa was in the kitchen sitting at the table with the stranger from before. They were talking to each other about something beyond either of the children's understanding. Zawa's fur was puffier than normal, like how the stray cats do when they're fighting, Hitoshi thought as he and Izuku quietly entered behind Zawa. Going further into the room, they saw who was making the yummy smells. Zashi was standing in front of the microwave-like machine. It was similar to it, but instead of putting anything into it to heat, they'd just type in something and food would come out. The boys snuck over to the snack cupboard and grabbed some munchies to tide themselves over until they were done exploring. Once they got their nibbles, they started to leave. They were almost to the exit when slam! A loud sound echoed from the table, making them both jump. Azawa and Hertz sure were setting up a space for the Murken to stay in until they figured out what to do with it. So far they had moved everything out of one of the storage rooms and laid out some disposable floor coverings. So, any ideas on how to get it in here? Hertzscher asked. None, Azawa sighed. We could try luring it in with food, I guess. We might as well try it. The Burbaloos shrugged. What kind of food do you think they'll like? Cooked meat should be fine, the other answered with a little uncertainty. It's not like I can give them anything raw right now. Okay, I'll go make some food for it and you can get some blankets for our other guest, he told him, handing over a stack of blankets. He left him to go up to the living quarter section of the ship. Azawa carried the blankets to the room Hertzscher told him the hero was given. They were going through the boxes they had left in there. Of course, they're gonna snoop. I can't believe we thought they'd leave our shit alone, he thought to himself. There isn't anything interesting in those boxes. It's just replacement parts and other shit, nothing incriminating. He told them as he dropped his load on the floor of the hallway and left. He met back up with Hertzscher as he was trying to figure out how to carry the Mrukken's food down the ladder. Do you need some help? He asked, reaching out for the food. Yeah, thanks so much. He handed over the cooked meat. He climbed down now that his hands were free. They took the food to the entrance where the creature was still laying. As they approached, it opened an eye to watch them. Azawa, after seeing he had its attention, walked to the space set up for it. Hertzscher stood back to ensure it was following him, which it did, and didn't get distracted. When they got outside of the room, Aizawa slid the meat across the floor and stepped away from the door. It followed the food into the room and ate it happily. With it distracted, they closed the door as quietly as possible. Now that that's done, we can relax a little, Hertzscher grinned at Azawa. Yeah, if we ignore the other extra we got, he grumbled, checking the time. It's getting late. The kids will need to wake up or they won't sleep tonight. Okay, so if they don't like me waking them, you can go get them and I'll prepare us something, the feathered sapient told the other. Well, I am their favorite, the furry being teased his friend, walking back to the ladder. So rude, he sniffled dramatically, following. I guess I'll move out so you and your new minions can go on missions on your own. They like you plenty, you're just too loud for nap time, he comforted him. You ridiculous clump of feathers. How can you know that? The Burbaloos asked. He climbed up the ladder. I can't get them to eat anything I make, the Estinus grumbled. He pulled himself up to the next level. He left Hertzscher to get the kids up and around. As he turned down the hallway to the infirmary, he encountered his other guest. What are you doing here? This is nowhere near the room we gave you. You're snooping, are you? I can't believe this. He yelled angrily but quickly quieted when he realized they were near the room with the kids. Come over here. He grabbed the hero and dragged them to the kitchen. Sit. He shoved him into a chair. What were you doing in that hallway? Were you going to try to integrate the kids? I bet that's what you were going to do, was it? No, I was just asking them if they knew where either of you were. I wanted to offer my help while I was here. They tried to placate him. But I got lost while following them. You were following them? Like that? He gestured toward their bulky person. What do you think you're doing? You're going to scare them, you scared them. He yelled, slamming a paw on the table. Two sets of squeaks shocked Azawa out of his angry rant. He twisted around to see what made that sound and found his kids looking up at him with big, wet eyes. I'm so sorry, kits. I didn't mean to scare you, he apologized, sweeping them up into his arms. He nuzzled their heads the way his birthing parent would comfort him when he was small. Now, who's scaring the kids? The hero decided to be antagonistic. Shut up, Hertzscher snapped at him. It doesn't change the fact that you admitted to chasing them around their own home in your defense form. You realize that they are already much smaller than you and you just made yourself bigger. Did you think they'd know you weren't going to hurt them? They can barely speak simple sentences. As he criticized them, they shrunk more and more into themselves. Eventually, they were back to their original size and slouching in their chair. Food's ready. He set a platter of food in the middle of the table. There are some plates in the cupboard over there. Go grab some for us, okay? He gestured to a cabinet and pulled out some silverware from a drawer. They all sat and ate their late-day meal in mostly silence with a couple of sniffles from the children. They both sat on Azawa's lap as they ate, being unwilling to leave his side after getting scared. After everyone was finished with their food, Azawa started to stand up with a kid each in an arm. "How about we find something to do to get you both sleepy?" He began before noticing the food covering both kids and his lap. He felt the sauce seeping through his pants. A more thorough look showed food on his arms as well. "Or we could all have a nice bath. Does that sound good to both of you? Also, hurts, sure, next time they eat in my lap, how about something less saucy, okay?" He retorted and left, causing the said person to break out in a cackle. Azawa had to suffer through all of his kits splashing and playing as he tried to get them clean and was now soaked and still covered in sauce. "Great," he sighed as he wrapped the kids in towels. "Go find Vishit to get dressed." He sent the giggling kids out using their name for hurts, sure. He looked at the traitorous wetness before draining it and turning on the above-head water faucet. As he rained down on him, he couldn't help but cringe at the horrible feel of the water in his fur. "Just gotta get clean, then I can get out and into the speed dryer." He lathered up his fur, making a bubble monster, and rinsed off. After turning the water and checking for any missed soap, he used a towel to rid himself of excess water before joining into the dryer. It uses high air pressure to dry people quickly. Sadly, for anyone furred, it can have some unfortunate side effects. Azawa threw on some clean clothes before cleaning up the bathing room, throwing the used towel and dirty clothes in a hamper and mopping up the wet floor. The kids met him as he was exiting. They are in fluffy, pawed jumpsuits with hoods. The hoods had 2 triangles on top. "What is this, hurts, sure?" he asked the person behind the kids. "Don't look at me. They picked them out," he defended. "Aren't they so cute? So fluffy." Speaking of fluffy, he smirked at Azawa. Shut up." He hid his face in his hands. "It's the stupid dryer. The kids splashed me so I couldn't use the water-free sprayer. I just get more stuff stuck in my fur." The kids tugged on his pants, looking up at him with hopeful eyes. After picking them, they decided to smush their faces into his and wrap their arms around him. "You two are making fun of me as well?" He pouted and only got a pair of yawns in response. "Looks like it's bedtime. I'll go lay them down. Can you set some ground rules with the hero?" "Yeah, that's fine. We wouldn't want your image as the big, scary espionage pirate to get damaged," he chortled. "You're lucky I like you." After much fun in the bathtub, the boys were sent to Zashi for something. They ran down the hall, leaving wet footsteps behind. They ran screaming past Zashi, making them chase them. They were swooped up and carried to the bedroom. They deposited the kids on the bed so they could search through a pile of clothes in the drawers. "What's all of that?" Izuku asked, watching as the feathery adult pulled out each bundle of fabric before returning it. "It's some outfits Zashi had been making for us," Hitoshi told him. "They're really good at making cool clothes." Zashi pulled out a fluffy bundle that Izuku could see that had a hood with cat ears. "I want that one." He pointed to it. "Izuku's?" he asked them. They looked at him and then the fabric before setting it aside and continuing his search. Izuku pulled it towards him, unfolding it to show a black cat onesie. It had 3 too many tails for a real cat, but that was fine by Izuku just because it had extra catness. Hitoshi saw it and asked, "Hitoshi too?" They nodded and brought out another one of the same color. After they were dressed, they ran out giggling to show Zawa their possum jammies. When they came out of the bathroom, they were fatter than he was before, with his suit at capacity and almost bursting. The boys pulled at his pant leg to get attention to ask if it was okay, but were swept up into their plushy arms. "They're soft, Zuku," Hitoshi exclaimed as he hugged the catman. "I know. It's so nice." Izuku agreed. They cuddled them as Zawa carried them back to the bedroom. When they tried to lay them down in their box, they held tighter and almost pulled out fur but were left in the box after much pain on Zawa's part. They stayed in the box until Zawa came back to sleep as well. They waited and listened for them to fall asleep before making their great escape. They climbed over the edge of the box and landed in a roll on the outside. As soon as they were both freed, they climbed onto the bed with Azawa. Each of the boys took a side to cuddle with and fell asleep in the alien cat's warm and soft embrace. After he finished telling Taishiro what they'd allow and where to stay out, he went to check on the kids. Today has been eventful for Hitoshi, and Izuku had an even more eventful metacycle. Who knew what kind of thoughts could be going through their little heads? He needed to see that they were sleeping peacefully before he started on his nocturnal work. He quietly entered the bedroom and crept to their box. Looking into it, he didn't see the little lumps of the kids' bodies. Maybe I just didn't see them with my bad night vision. He felt for them, but they weren't there. Shit, he thought as he went over to where he could see Azawa's sleeping body. He almost shook him awake before noticing some strange coloring on him. He leaned over to see one kid's face, and a glance to the other side revealed the other child. He snorted, "Really, Azawa?" He pulled the blankets out of the kid's bed and wrapped the kids up. So big and scary. May was watching her mom pack her tools and extra parts for the repairs of the other group's ship. After being denied, she had been preparing as well. She had decided to tail her group to see the real live aliens. Aliens? I bet they're super cool like the ones from that one movie. Do they have acid blood too? They would be so awesome, she giggled in excitement at the thought. She was geared up and heading out for her adventure when a voice called out to her, "What do you think you're doing, young lady? Mischief, I hope. It's been so boring lately." She spun around to see Mr. Jean. "Nothing you need to be concerned about. I was just going to explore the forest." She tried to sneak away from him. "I think that will be fine since we've patrolled the area enough to know how safe it is. You're real SUS kid. Just don't go too far and get lost. I'm on to you." Jean let her go play. She hurried out before he could change his mind or, worse, decide she needed to be supervised. Jean watched her run into the forest as he was joined by a group of adults. "What's the little mechanic up to, Jean?" asked one of them. "She's off to have an adventure of her own." "A misadventure? I guess she got bored staying on the ship, so she wants to explore the area a little. Bet she's gonna spy on the aliens," he told the group. He grabbed a bag with supplies and started in the direction the kid went. "I'll keep an eye on her so she doesn't get into too much trouble. Gotta let her have a little fun though." Azawa woke up the next morning to some unusual weight on each side. As he looked to his left side, he saw a fluffy black and green head snuggling into him, and on the other side was a second fluffy head, this one with black and purple. The little Terrans were tucked in with their blankets and using him as a pillow. "Really hurts, sure? Why would he let them out when we have guests? He needs to stop with his antics," he grumbled internally as he carefully lifted both kids and deposited them back into their bed. After retucking them, he evaluated himself and noticed some wet marks on him. He checked the little ones for wetness as well, hoping it wasn't what he thought it was. Their clothes appeared dry except for Izuku's hood, whose mouth was leaking drool. "At least I don't have to change the bedding," he thought in relief. He changed jumpsuits and went out to scold Hertz, sure about his irresponsible actions. Exiting the room, he encountered the hero. "What are you doing up here? Did we agree that you'd stay away from the areas the children would be in?" He snarled at them. "I wasn't going to try anything, I promise. The Burbaloos sent me to get you. There are some people here to fix the ship, and he said he needs you to watch them or something." They flinched away from the angry Estins. "Just great," he mumbled. "Lead the way then." He didn't want to leave them where the children were. They lead him outside to the damaged side of the ship. There they met the suited strangers and Hertz, sure talking. "Hey guys, they said that there are just some final touches they need to do before they're done. I gotta go show Aki our comms while her minions finish." "Alright, be quick," Azawa agreed. He made himself comfortable leaning against the undamaged part of the metal exterior. As he watched the mysterious group work to fix their shuttle, he couldn't help but admire their quick work and efficiency. They finished a repair that would have taken a kilocycle minimum for most engineering ports in 2 decacycles. They were using small canisters that shot out small flames to melt the metal and cause it to glow an ominous red. That looks dangerous to be doing without more safety equipment. He moved away from the ship to the tree where he could see if anything caught fire. While he was standing there, he heard the bushes next to him start to rustle like some creature was sneaking through them. Aizawa watched the foliage for whatever was hiding in them. He tracked its trajectory before bracing himself to pounce. Hertz sure led the pink and black suit individual into his ship and up to the top level where the main communication system was. The comms have a station on each level that can function independently at short range, but for long-distance transmissions, they need this one to work. Here it is. Do you think you can get it to work? She examined the machine. I won't know until I try. She started to disassemble the front panels. She quickly became immersed in her work. The only sounds came from her tinkering. He let himself relax as he watched her work. I see what it could be. This will be an easy fix, she suddenly exclaimed after a moment or two of silence. In response to the unexpected shouting, Hertz sure jolted. Whoa, you can fix it? Yeah, I just need to replace this thing with a Majig and rewire that doohickey thing. She excitedly rambled an explanation at him in incomprehensible gibberish. Okay, do you have that stuff? I don't know what any of that is, he asked, uncertain about what the other was so excited about. We don't have the stuff either, but it shouldn't be any trouble to jerry-rig something to get it to work. She started pulling out a mess of wire and parts. He watched awestruck as she turned a pile of junk into a functioning machine. She's so cool. Who knew it was possible to fix stuff with such basic parts? Their species must be geniuses, he thought to himself. He wished he had the same skill and determination to make the impossible happen. As she was packing up her tools, they heard the sound of little footsteps and a loud thud coming from the hallway. A little head cover in a fluffy black hood poked into the room. Their hood was too big and covered most of their face, but Hertz sure saw the little speckles that let him know which child it was. Hello, little one, what are you up to? He picked up the child. That outfit is so cute. Where did you get it from? Aki gushed. Thanks. I made it from some materials one of our friends had left over from one of her projects. I might have made it too big though. He held the child up to show how the jumpsuit engulfed all of Izuku's limbs, covering his little paws. That just means they can grow into it. For now, you can just set them down a second. She knelt to roll up the offending fabric and pulled their standing paws into the ends, freeing their hands and feet. Maybe remove the feet so they can be rolled up as well? They'll probably slip if their feet won't stay in their feetsies. I think I understood most of that. Roll up sleeves and remove the feet? The paw covers? Hertz sure pointed to the jumpsuit leg ends, trying to translate the unfamiliar words. Yeah, or alter it so they can use the grippies and not slip all over the place. She nodded in agreement. Okay, thank you for the advice, I think. Picking up his child again, he led her out of their ship. Once outside, they started to hear a commotion from where her minions were fixing the ship. As they got close, they saw Azawa holding Jin by the neck. Hertz sure set Izuku on his feet and ushered him back into the ship, then ran over to them hoping to de-escalate the situation. What's going on? Why are you holding him like that? I found them crawling through the bushes. They were probably looking for a way to sneak onto our ship and snoop, he answered, giving them a shake. Was this your plan? He directed towards Aki. No, we just wanted to help you and maybe ask if you've seen any kids. Some aliens, people came to our planet, taking the children and killing the adults. You have one of them. We thought maybe you'd know something. Please put him down, she pleaded with him. What do you mean one of them? Do you mean Hitoshi? Are you a Terran? The furred sapient asked in suspicion. He dropped Jin but kept an eye on him for any sudden movements. If you are, prove it. Terran? Is that what we're called by your people? She asked as she removed her helmet. See? We're the same species as your child. She gestured to her fleshy face with forward-facing eyes and a toothy grin, just like the kids but with different colors. Your dash. Jinin, who had been acting shifty during their conversation, interrupted whatever Azawa was going to say about the sudden revelation. Ma'am, we have a problem. It's not too serious. May wanted to play outside and I was going to let her, but I lost her around here. Really, it's fine. I'm so sorry. It can't really be my fault that she likes to run off. What's going on? Hertz sure asked. Confused from the rambling rant he understood zero of but recognized some of the words from the kids. Given what they know now, it must be the same language they had been using with each other. He said that my daughter ran off. He lost her around here somewhere. I'll have to send some people to look for her in the woods. Luckily, we haven't found any evidence of dangerous animals in the area dash, just as she said that a big, green mass ran out of the exit she and Hertz sure had just come out of. The mass had run off into the woods, screeching. Fuck. The Mrukin got out. What if it goes after her kid? Hertz sure panicked. Aki, does your daughter have pink hair as well? Meowzawa calmly asked. Hitoshi woke up back in the box wrapped up in blankets with Izuku still asleep next to him. Hitoshi wiggled himself free to look around for Zawa or Zashi, but neither adult was in the room with them. Izuku, he shook the other boy. Wake up. I want to go explore the spaceship some more. I'm up, the sleepy child responded as he groggily rolled over and sat up. He looked ready to fall back to sleep. Let's go then. He pulled him up. He helped Izuku climb over the edge before following him. Should we check the loud room? Okay, then can we cloud watch in the window room? Izuku asked. Sure. The two climbed down to the bottom level. When they got to the area they believed it was, there weren't any sounds. They started to open and look into each room. Most of them only had uninteresting boxes in them, but one had a set of blankets on the floor. Did you think someone snuck onto the ship while no one was looking? Izuku nervously asked. I don't know, but we should clean up the mess they left, Hitoshi said as he and Izuku picked up the blankets. They took them where they saw a pile of clothes, believing that that was where the dirty laundry was left for the cleaning fairy to visit. After dropping off the blankets, the boys returned to exploring the bottom level when they encountered a locked door. They could hear some scratching sounds coming from the room. Izuku turned to his friend to ask, What do you think is in there? I don't know. Hitoshi tried to get the door to open, but it didn't move no matter what he tried. Normally, the doors opened automatically with a hand wave from the kids, but this door wouldn't budge. Knocking on it caused whatever was in there to run and hit the door with a loud bang. Both boys jumped in momentary fright. I don't think we should try to open it. What if it's a monster? But they could be hurt or scared, and that could be why they are making all those noises, Izuku countered. I'm gonna find one of the adults. Can you try to talk to them? Maybe they'll calm down if they know they aren't alone anymore. He ran back down the hall to the ladder with only some slipping and sliding from his too large garment. Mei made her way through the forest, following the direction she remembered seeing the others going before. Eventually, she could hear the sounds of metalworking and welding. She ran towards the sounds only to slide to a stop at the sight of a big dark figure. They're huge. She snuck through the bushes to get a better look. They looked like a giant, fluffy cat. I wonder if they share any other similarities with cats. I think Mom might have a laser pointer somewhere. I'll have to look for it later and test it on them. Her thoughts distracted her from looking at where she was going. She accidentally broke a twig when she was trying to go around them. They spun around at the sudden sound, eyes glowing dark red. She stilled momentarily until something else caught their attention before she took off. Their shouting covered any sounds she would have made. After weaseling her way through the brush enough, she sneaked to where she could see an opening. She ran in and started to explore the alien spaceship. As she walked down the corridor, she observed the metallic walls. I wonder if they use a special metal for their spaceships, one that's more durable. She punched a wall, denting it. Is it just resistant to temperature extremes? Who's there? A voice called out to her from down the hall. Izuku. Hello, mystery person. She shouted back. Her every footstep echoed off the walls as she ran towards them. As soon as she could see the dark, fluffy shape of someone standing in the hallway, she shouted, Do you know anything about the metal this ship is made from? They flinched away from her shouting and turned around to see her. They had the face like a human child with little fluffs of lavender fur. Is this what an alien cat child looks like? That's so interesting. What's it like being an alien? Do you have quirks like humans do? With every question she asked, she would get closer and closer until her face was an inch from the other child's. They try to back away, but she follows. Who are you and how did you get in here? They ask, doing their best to look intimidating. Through the door, she bluntly answers. Can I do experiments on you? I want to know what kind of superpowers aliens can have. But I'm not an alien, they argued. She looked them over, taking in the multiple tails and furry body just like a smaller version of the large cat outside. You and your parent don't look human to me. They looked at what they were wearing, realizing what Mei was talking about. This is a onesie that was made for me. They pulled off the hood, revealing the rest of their purple hair. I'm human. I'm Hitoshi. Oh, she pouted. This sucks. Her shout seemed to wake something in the room next to them. Really? I just got them to calm down, the newly revealed human exclaimed. He started to talk to the noisy occupant on the other side softly. Hey, it's okay. What's that? She asked. I don't know, my friend and I just heard scratching coming from this room. We didn't know how to open the door for them, so I've been trying to keep them calm until he gets back with one of the adults, he told her between attempts to soothe the creature. May checked the door for a way to open it and saw a keypad. Give me a boost, she told him. Okay, he helped her reach. Just be quick. She pulled out the tools she carries with her everywhere. She looked for where the screws were but didn't see any, so she used a flat head to pry off the panel to get to the wires. She then started to test with the wires to get the door opened. Once it opened, a large green beast exited the room. This one has to be an alien, she excitedly declared. Hello, do you mind if I experiment with you? She approached them and started to pet them. They settled down to let her do as she pleased with their mighty fluff. She slowly circled them, gliding her hand over each part and stroking their fur. Their tail fur was a little stiff like a prickly hedgehog. The other child joined her in cuddling the chill alien creature. He lay down on top of them. My friend told me her name is Cupcake. That's the perfect name for her. She appraised. What about you? What's your name? He asked her. I'm May Hatsum, future CEO of Hatsum Intergalactic Company. She introduced herself with a puffed chest. She climbed on Cupcake's back. I think she's strong and big enough for us to ride. She offered her hand to him. He searched the bedroom, kitchen, and the room with the table with buttons and switches, but Zashi and Zawa weren't in any of them. He found his friend from the cage instead. They were sitting at the console, staring at the screen. Zawa and Zashi? He asked the tall alien. They just stared at him in silence. What? They responded in confusion. What's a Zawa and Zashi? Zawa is Zawa, Izuku tried to explain as he took a big stance with his arms out and his shoulders up towards his neck. Zashi is Zashi, he mimicked wings. The others still didn't understand but just agreed to end the interaction. I don't know, sorry. Izuku's bottom lip stuck out. Oh, thanks you. He left the cage friend to their screen time. He continued to the next floor to look for his guardians. He made his way to the top floor in search of either Zawa or Zashi. When he got up the ladder, he saw all the doors but one was closed. He hurried towards the open door, his slipping and sliding worsening from his excitement. Peeking into the room, he saw Zashi standing with a biker lady after pushing up his hood enough to see. She had on a primarily black suit with pink embellishments. Zashi scooped him up and held him in their feathery arms. The adult started talking about something before Izuku got set back down and the lady messed with his cat suit. Izuku glanced up at the bird person for help but found none. They were busy just watching what she was doing. He was too worried about the strange person in his space to notice that some of the words she was saying were familiar. Soon enough, Izuku was safely back in their arms. Together, they headed back to the way Izuku just came from. Izuku kept an eye on the new stranger as he clung close to Zashi. Why are there so many new people on the ship? Only when they got to the bottom level did Izuku remember the reason he was looking for the adults. Zashi, he quietly called. His small voice easily got drowned out by yelling outside. They hurriedly exited the shuttle. Zashi covered his eyes from whatever was going on. They set him down just outside of the exit and gave him a nudge to go back inside. Izuku curiously glanced in the direction of the noise, but there were too many people to see anything. He decided to rejoin Hitoshi. On his way back, he heard the sound of something big running towards him. Cupcake was rampaging down the hall. Izuku tried to duck down out of the way but got lifted by the back of his onesie. He tried to escape from their grasp but all his wiggling didn't work against the strong grip on him. With a slump, he submitted himself to being kidnapped, again. Are you saying that her kid got kidnapped by the Mrukken? Hurts, she asked incredulously. I don't think it was the Mrukken that's kidnapping anyone, rather it's the other way around, Azawa corrected him. Yeah, that sounds like her. Aki, or Aki as they learned was her actual name, agreed. She's always been a bit of a wild child. Not too long ago, she disassembled our navigations to see how it worked. Luckily, we weren't far from a planet at the time. I can't imagine how badly we would have died if we weren't. She told them with a proud parent grin like it was something cute and not an absolutely terrifying incident. Hertz sure hesitated, worried about the child that could be tormenting a bloodthirsty monster. It might even be too late for the poor girl. The creature could have already ripped her to shreds. Is your kid safe to be around? Azua, on the hand, was worried about the other child he saw on the Mrukin's back. She is not going to harm anyone with her curiosity, is she? It'll be fine. It'll only be some light experimentation, nothing too drastic. She waved away their concerns, unsuccessfully. Experiments? Why would she need to experiment on anyone or anything? The Burbalus screeched. Let's not worry about that. We should start looking for them. The sooner we find them, the sooner we can get away from them, Azua advised, muttering the last part to Hertz. Sure. Yeah, okay, I can fly over in the direction they went. I might be able to see them from above. Hertz sure took to the air with a few flaps of his wings. If I see them, I'll message you. All right, I'll coordinate with Aki's group to search the ground level, the other pirate acknowledged. I'll need to radio Inko. She should be able to send some more people over to help look for our wayward child and her new friend. Aki pulls out a black block and talks into it in Terranese. We have a code gremlin. I repeat, we have a code gremlin. She has taken off into the woods with a large predator. We'll need some tamers to calm the beast. It wasn't until May stopped digging her heels into her side that Cake finally stopped running. That was fun. May exclaimed with a big smile as she jumped off Cupcake's back. Yeah. We were going so fast. Hitoshi slid off the furry back. I didn't enjoy it. Not at all. A voice yelled from the area ahead of them, the same area as Cupcake's head. There was a look of shock on May and Hitoshi's faces. She can talk. Who can? The two followed the voice until they saw Izuku hanging from the back of his catsuit. His struggle caused him to swing. Can someone help me? Hitoshi rushed to his friend's side. I got you. He tried to pull him free from Cupcake's mouth. Let go of me, Cupcake. He used all of his strength to get her to release Izuku by using his entire body weight. His feet could no longer touch the ground from his effort. In spite of their combined weight, Cupcake continued to carry them until she found a large tree where she could rest near. She lowered herself to the ground. As soon as Izuku's feet touched the ground, he tried to escape, but Cupcake hadn't freed him from her grip. She settled down and held her babies down to groom them. No, the boys whined. May could only point and laugh at them. After the boys were deemed clean, Cupcake turned her attention to her new baby. Oh no, was all May could utter before Cupcake was upon her. Help me! Izuku and Hitoshi shared a look before, laughing at her predicament. May was shocked at the boys' reaction and felt betrayed. She glared at them as they laughed. Izuku and Hitoshi stopped laughing, turning their faces away in shame. Three silently came to an understanding. The green-haired child looked around the area. You know, Cupcake deserves some prettying up too, he said, holding a bundle of flowers. Yeah. Let's make her beautiful, the purple child agreed instantly. They used her distraction with May to put flowers into her long fur. Cupcake was moving too much for the flowers to stay, so the boys stuck the stems into her fur, hoping they'd stay in place. Eventually, she resembled a blooming bush more than an animal. Isn't she pretty? Izuku wrapped his arms around her the best his little arms could, her fur engulfing him. Yeah, she's really pretty, the other boy agreed. Cupcake finished with May and raised to her paws. She did a big stretch before shaking out her fur, causing her blooms to fly up into the air. Oh no! It's a flower shower! The boys shouted as it rained flowers and petals on them. I'm too pretty now. Izuku throws himself to the ground, making more petals to fly around. I'm dying. Hitoshi joined him, proclaiming, dead? Hee hee, you two are silly, May giggled. How about braiding the stems to make them stay better? Izuku sat up. I don't know how to braid. Can you show me? Sure, let's gather some new flowers. She picks up one of the flowers laying on the ground from its flight. It was in a sad state with missing petals and a broken stem. She glanced at Cupcake's long fluffy body and added, lots of flowers. Okay, let's go pick the most perfectful flowers, Izuku cheered. He grabbed Hitoshi, who had yet to get up from the ground, and pulled him toward the nearest patch of flowers he saw. He groaned. Not wanting his onesie to get torn and dirty, he pulled himself to his feet. He and Izuku search high and low for the very best flowers for Cupcake. They only returned to her after both of them had armfuls of them. Will these be enough? Izuku asked Mei as he dropped his floral harvest. She considered the pile the boys created. Yeah, it should be. She grabbed a few. Get the flowers to stay where you need them to, she started to teach them. They watched her work closely as she nimbly weaved the plants into the fur. They didn't move from their spots this time. After they understood the steps, they started to join her in turning Cupcake into a shrub. Soon, they were finished with her transformation. Perfect, Hitoshi proclaimed proudly. What should we do with the rest of the flowers? Izuku pointed to the leftover buds. Flower crowns? Hitoshi suggested. One of my foster sisters taught me how to make them. It's similar to how we did Cupcake's flowers, he showed them how to start it. Yeah, and we could make Zashi and Zawa crowns too. Izuku suggested. Yeah. We should make them pretty too. Hitoshi agreed. The three kids started to make the crowns. They kept making them until they ran out of flowers. Together they created enough for each of them to have 6 each with a couple of extra. Izuku put on a bunch and proclaimed, I am the king of all plants. Whatever you say, broccoli boy, Hitoshi retorted. I'm not broccoli, you, grapehead. Izuku pouted. My hair looks nothing like grapes. It obliviously lavender. Hitoshi ran at Izuku, who took off as fast as he could. Their fighting quickly became play when Izuku slipped and fell into mud. He picked up a glob and threw it at Hitoshi. He retaliated by returning fire with leaves. While the boys were waging war, Mei decided to experiment on Cupcake. The first step was to see how she compared with animals from Earth. She checked her paw pads for beaniness. Yes, very beanie, she noted with professionalism. Now let's see how fluffy she is. She face-planted into Cupcake's side. Izuku and Hitoshi, seeing her cuddling with Cupcake, join her in the fluffy embrace. As he stalked through the trees and brush, Azawa kept an eye on his companion. Had gotten paired up with one of the Terrans. They were shorter than the other adult Terrans he had met. They weren't wearing a suit, allowing him to see they had a white hair with a few red streaks. They had trouble keeping up with his pace but didn't complain or ask him to slow down. He respected that about them. If his kid wasn't in trouble, he might have slowed his pace. Instead, he picked them up and quickly continued their tracks. You're heavy. What are you made of? He asked in surprise. Pure spite and rage, they responded blankly. I am confused. How can you be made of spite and rage? He asked. Aren't those abstract things? It's what drives me, they said. It's the only thing that keeps me going. It's the only thing that makes me feel alive. I am okay? He set them back on their feet and hastened his pace, uncaring if they kept up or not. I have to get rid of these Terrans. They are extremely aggressive and dangerous. After we find the kids, we'll point them in Nezu's direction. He can give them back the children we rescued. And they can stay far away from my kids. The Terran had to jog to keep up. After a moment or two of silence, they tried to start a conversation. They casually asked, how did you end up with that kid? Were you part of the Envy Dash? Less talking, more walking. He interrupted them and walked faster. They sighed and muttered, what a grump fish. They trudged behind him. Why does he have to take his anger out on me? It's not like I'm the one that lost his kid. Azawa turned to glare at them. They did some kind of gesture with their forepaw going across their mouth. They searched for signs of a giant animal running through the forest. You know, we could call for the kids by names. They might respond. What's your kid's name? They suggested. Hitoshi, he told them. The two continued like that, calling for the missing kids, until they encountered a huge shrub with flowers. That's a weird plant, the Terran commented. What do you mean? Azawa looked at the bush. Oh, I see. It had flowers of different colors. Looking at the other side of the supposed bush, he saw a set of Terran walking paws. They led up to a big pink flower. Next to it was another big flower. This one was purple. The large flowers had some flowers as well. Looks like we found the kids. He scooped up the purpled flower. I'll radio her mom real quick, the other told him as they wandered so the kids wouldn't be disturbed. They were in fact quick, which Azawa could commend. They returned after a micro or two. She said she and Inko meet you back at your ship. I'm going to bring May home. They came around the Merkin to grab the pink Terran before leaving the SNS with the beast and his kid.